First meeting in March. After this, we'll be 50% done with our meetings for March. It's March 1st, 2016, and let the record show that all three commissioners are present. Why does it feel like I haven't been here in a few months? Let's start with a public comment. Any public comment?
I don't believe we do.
Nobody?
Amy, could you check, or Shirley?
Slightly new format
No,
today.
no one has signed
Sort
up.
of.
Could I have a minute, Mike?
Okay, thanks. No one has signed up for public comment?
All right, so before we start our consent agenda, Commissioner Briscoe would like to address something.
We've had a long time, a business tenant of Bellingham and fisherman, and a good man in Bellingham passed away recently, Martin Coolgis. I'd like to take just a minute to speak about him. He owned CK Fish Company with his brothers Steve and Nick in Blaine. Longtime businessman, and he has passed, and he's also the father of Mayor Kelly Linville. His service is tomorrow at Sacred Heart at 11 a.m., and I just thought I'd like to mention that so folks know.
Thanks, Bobby. So no public comment right now, consent agenda, let's just start rolling.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through F.
All right, any discussion about any of these items? Good.
No.
All right, hence consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and let's move into our action items. And our first one will be from Sunil. Diane?
A motion to authorize an amendment to the approved 2016 budget for the Bellingham International Airport, increasing the airport's advertising and promotion budget, item number 1-1-001-7313-000 by $50,000 for a total of $150,000, and authorize the executive director to execute a PSA with Traction Creative Communications for marketing and advertising Bellingham International Airport.
Awesome. Well, Sunil?
Back in the latter part of November, we started talking to the airlines about how to address the uncharacteristic downturn in passenger traffic that we were experiencing. Although there were a number of large economic reasons that were impacting the demand for air travel out of our airport, the airlines were expressing that they'd made some decisions internally in cutting back in advertising, which may have prompted some of this downturn. Now, it's not customary for airports to advertise typically for airlines. This is something that's done as part of an inducement or incentive package when you bring in new air service. But as part of our business retention strategy, we felt that their recommendation to help through a broad advertising campaign in the lower mainland area of British Columbia was warranted. It is a target of about 1.7 million people. We have estimated that this campaign would yield about a 10% increase in the 2016 winter season. And as a result, we went out with an RFP. Most of the scope of work that you saw in the back, which is the marketing strategy, was actually through the assistance of the airlines. My recommendation to you is approve the increase in the, but it's an important business retention strategy. And we already have a really capable firm. The budget was formulated prior to those conversations. So it is a sizable increase in the budget selected. It's a BC-based firm, and they'll be working in lockstep with the airlines to execute this marketing strategy. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
The advertising's only going to be in Canada?
Primarily in the lower mainland area. But what this does is it leverages some of the advertising funds from the destination markets. So we're probably going to have some contribution from the Hawaiian Tourism Bureau to this fund to market the Bellingham area as well.
And you think this is the best route to go, Snail?
I think, I don't want to call it a desperation, but when you're trying to hold on to business, it's easier to hold on to business than develop new business. And when your customer tells you that it's a good idea, then it usually is a good idea.
Thank you.
So I'm going to play a little devil's advocate based on what you just said. The customer is going to benefit from our spending, so of course they think it's a good idea. Probably a more serious but pointed question is that we're right now, because of the downturn in traffic passengers, we're having some issues with funding at the airport. Could be better, but this increases our spending. So, a 10% increase. What does that end up giving us if we meet our mark at 10%?
Well, if we spend the 50,000 additional that's being sought here for a total of 135,000 in the campaign, we estimate that a 10% increase in the Hawaiian markets, which are the ones that are particularly impacted, would yield about $240,000.
Okay.
At an estimate of $12.60 per additional passenger. So I think it'll more than cover our expense. And it enables, as I said, the ability to leverage then funds from those destination markets, the Hawaiian Tourism Bureau, to market our marketplace, the Bellingham market.
So the increase in revenue would be $12 per passenger. We're not spending $12 per passenger.
Right.
Okay, because I think we get about $4 per passenger for PFCs.
Well, you have to break it down into what the airlines pay us per passenger, which is roughly $196 per passenger, per boarding passenger. And then the PFCs are up to $450, which is the maximum you can charge per passenger.
Okay.
Almost all of this is digital, right? It's not newspaper, it's not flyers, it's
a combination, but the majority of it is digital, what they call high funnel, mid funnel, and low funnel. They're going to monitor how that message is communicated, but there are some static and electronic billboard type signs that are going to be strategically located.
okay. Thank you.
Anything further? No? Anything further? All right. Thank you, Sunil. Rob, do you have anything to add to this at all?
Just that some of those additional revenues, there's probably parking,
Yeah.
and then commissary revenues that we get from the food and beverage that's purchased out there.
Sure. One of the strategies would be to cut costs too, but we can't really do that, right?
I think we've done a pretty good job of cutting costs at the airport. I think we're probably at the minimum operating requirements right now, but we are always looking at that and trying to find better ways to operate more efficiently.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ron. Nothing? No? Good? All right. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thanks, Sunil. All right, moving on to our next topic. Mr. Hergesheimer, you are, is he still here? John.
Authorize the executive director to execute amendment number 42 to the professional services agreement with Anchor QEA for the Whatcom Waterway Phase 1 site cleanup project in the contract amount of $652,903 for a total contract amount of $11,879,339.50 and a total authorized amount of $11,905,185.50.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Hergesheimer, Senior Project Engineer. This PSA amendment is for the completion of the Whatcom Waterway construction management work for 2016 for the approximate 6 months duration of the contract that's yet remaining to be completed. And the total represents both construction support services for construction oversight and the environmental monitoring that's required for the dredging and the capping work in the waterway, as well as the general project management costs to administer that by Anchor QEA, as well as some agency and stakeholder coordination, which goes to the setup of the final closeout report that would happen after this work is done, and keeping the agencies and the stakeholders involved and informed of those events that happened during the course of the project, during the management of the construction side. And the final item is task number 5, which is our ongoing NPDES support and permitting services. That's the permit we have for the discharge at the ASB, Aerated Stabilization Basin, and the stormwater permit that we have for construction for the project. So the total is $652,903, and again, that covers the final stage of the construction management to bring this project from the contractor's side, and managing that contractor brings that to a close. But in addition to that, beyond this PSA amendment, there will be future PSA amendments for the actual closeout with Department of Ecology and the grants associated with that, as well as the permits, the nationwide 38 permit. And in addition to that, coming up in the future, approximately May, would be another PSA amendment that I wanted to let you know about at this point, and that would be for the monitoring work that has to occur after the project is complete, so we can certify and document that the cleanup solution was indeed effective. And so those will be coming to you in future months, and actually in future years, because this is a multi-year monitoring requirement per the permit. But as far as this PSA amendment, number 42, do you have any specific questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
No, Bobby? No?
Are we discharging water into the ASB now, lagoon now?
We do discharge water into the ASB. Basically, at this point, we're not discharging out of the ASB, but we're receiving water from all the old GP site that's south of the Whatcom Waterway, as well as some of the area around the Starkcraft warehouse area. That was the former GP site. So all that flows into or is pumped into the ASB, which actually is a great use of that on an interim basis, because that's our stormwater treatment system. And so the water gets pumped in there from the rainfall. It evaporates faster than it actually is accumulated. So we have a buffer that we use in that 28-acre pond area, basically, that we can use to do all our stormwater capture of that system.
So all that stormwater that goes into there evaporates so that it doesn't get any deeper.
It fluctuates over the year, so it will get the elevation of the ASB will rise well above the average tide level, but over time that evaporates out before the next surge of stormwater comes in. Yes. Yes, it's a wonderful system on an interim basis to be able to use for that purpose. Eventually, of course, depending on the use of the ASB, then there will be a discharge that happens in order to lower that water and perform whatever work we're going to do in the ASB. I'd also like to point out that the dredge quantity that I reported to you in January, we are very close to our final numbers, and we are approximately 13,000 cubic yards less than what we anticipated would be the maximum possible amount, which results in an approximate saving of $2 million. So the January action that you took to increase that contingency, we've worked very hard with the consultant and with the contractor to get the levels of excavation that we need for the permit. But basically, the contractor did not over-excavate to a payable limit that they were allowed to over-excavate to, just because of the difficulty of dredging. And they were very careful and got to that limit, but not really below it. So we had originally incorporated that payable overdredge, which was allowable in our calculations, and I'm happy to report that we're not going to need to expend funds on those.
So that savings goes back to MODCA and the insurance?
it would not be spent out of there. So it hasn't been drawn out of there. It would just would not be.
But that's where the
submitted for
savings shows
reimbursement.
up, at those two
Savings
groups.
shows up,
Yeah.
right, MACA and AIG.
See, John, on these tasks, I see the tasks in the letter from Anchor, but the strategic purpose discusses goals 6 and 7 and the barge ramp. But I didn't see that in Anchor's, what am I missing? I didn't see anything about that in Anchor's letter, or unless I'm reading it incorrectly.
For item task 6, you said?
No, the strategic purpose on the opening page here on the memorandum shows that we're supporting goal 6 and 7, which
yes.
regards the barge ramp.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that should have been removed.
Oh, okay.
That was from the last PSA amendment, which had permitting for the barge ramp.
Gotcha, okay,
I
all right.
apologize for that.
Well, I was going to ask about the barge ramp, so, okay. So I think we're done. That was my only question. Nothing more? Nothing else? Nothing more? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Thanks, John, appreciate it.
Thank
All right. And Adam Fulton, look at you in the batter's box running right up. Diane?
Authorize the executive director to execute a professional services agreement with Ashton Engineering Incorporated to provide consulting services for the I&J Street Float and Squalicum Boat Launch modifications in the amount of $117,138, plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized amount of $129,000.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. What you're seeing here is a PSA that's done in response to our decision to locate All-American Marine here on Hilton Avenue. Obviously, they have a facility that's constructed upland, but they also require in-water facilities. This PSA amendment is actually, 2 locations, which I'll show you here. The first here is at the boat launch, and then the second is in the red rectangle. And that's what we're calling the I&J Street in-water facility. The other is, of course, the Squalicum Boat Launch. There's 2 things about it. First of all, it's a PSA that's occurring in 2 locations. The second is that both PSAs are a complete set of possibilities for things we may run into in the permitting process. The reason we're doing it that way is because of the schedule. All-American Marine, we anticipate being done with that construction at New Year's, 9 months from now. And then approximately 5 months from then is when they could potentially have a product rolling out of that new building. So that puts a launch, that we need to have a launch path, which what you're seeing here, ready for work around May of 2017. The fish window to do that work at the boat launch would not come available until August. So you can see the pinch point there. We need to have it ready for May. We can't get in the water till August. Therefore, we have to do it this fish window, i.e. in 2016. So so therefore, what I wanted to do with this PSA is include all of the possibilities of things I could run into: soil investigation, rebar analysis, biological evaluation, all these sorts of things. Normally, I would incrementalize this PSA and come back to you and kind of give you an update and keep you appraised. But in this one, I actually just need to move quicker than that in order to have that launch facility available. Just to take you through the 2 sites very quickly and the work we're doing there. Let me get rid of that. This is the I&J Street waterway. Over here is the Coast Guard facility. This is their building. That's their in-water facility. We're dealing with the possibility of creating an in-water facility inside this rectangle. Just kind of a blow-up of that. Apologize again. That this would be approximately 155-foot long by 9-foot float with access off of the I&J Street side or off of Hilton. It wouldn't be exclusive to All American Marine. It would be what's called a fit-up float, and that means when they construct a boat and they launch it, it's still 4 to 8 weeks out from being a functional boat. They have to trim it and balance the motors out and do all these sorts of things to it. They do a fit-up process. The other configuration, again, for that same float looks like an end moor there, you can see. And again, we're at the infancy of this. We're exploring what those possibilities might be. Those are the two sites. The other, if I might just wind back here, the other site is, again, here at the boat launch. And what we're having to do there, as simple as it sounds, is move this float, pardon me, to there, from the red to the green. And in so doing, we create approximately 50 feet between the two floats. We lose one lane of our boat launch, but we create 50 feet between the floats, and that's what is needed for the launch of the All-American Marine vessel, the largest one they would be launching. In terms of losing a lane of our boat launch, is that a problem? We don't think it is. There's approximately really a couple times during the year that we get very busy at that boat launch and very plugged. But really what you're seeing is a very full boat launch, but not necessarily a very full parking lot, but not necessarily a full boat launch. If we're short of anything out there, it's not launching capacity, it's parking.
We won't lose that. We'll lose that permanently. It won't be able to be used for a boat launch when there's not a boat being launched from All American Marine.
Correct. When we're launching a boat for All American Marine, it's similar to a Cape Canaveral launch with a very large, almost apartment building size boat that is moving at a half a mile an hour on that route I show. And in that case, we, for the week previous, we would block out this parking right here for our launch. And then for that approximately 6 hours, the boat launch is out of commission. It's a middle of the night show.
But this is a permanent, that'll be moved over permanently and not be able to be used for the public for launching a boat.
You're correct. We would go from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, and there would be moorage, of course, on the far side of in the 4th lane, but not vehicle access to that 4th lane. We don't anticipate that being a capacity problem.
And didn't we just repair that dock?
We did some work down on the bottom end where some of the ramp, the ramp planks had not settled and actually had not even been set in the previous project. So we just went in and set those lower panels in. Those
won't be moved, though.
Those won't be affected.
Okay.
Yeah. If the commissioners don't have any questions, it is a recommendation of the staff to move ahead with this PSA so we can get working on these facilities.
Yeah, jump in.
How many launches are we talking about a year? Do we have any idea?
Approximately
One or
6 to
two?
8.
Oh, 6 to 8?
Yeah.
Okay. On that picture where you had the float in the water in I&J Waterway, are we going to have to do any depth work there?
Potentially, it's involved. And let me clarify something. The time frame that I need to get done in order for them to launch is only the boat launch. I'm sorry. But the I&J Street facilities will lag behind. Matter of fact, those we do not plan to construct until the 2017 fish window. So there will be a time when All American Marine launches, but we don't have the fit-up float ready for them. In those times, we will use a fit-up float out here at Gate 10 or Gate 12 or something else. Your question again, Commissioner?
Depth work. We're going to have to do
Yes.
any dredging to put that stuff in.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry to give a vague answer, but it's involved because there's a cleanup associated with Bornstein's property and the Olivine former tenant. That there's a cleanup through that waterway that will affect the depth, will affect the placement of the float, and so yes, there will probably be depth work. I don't know what it is yet. But we do feel like there's adequate depth. Matter of fact, as shown right there, I think they've got -10.
Okay, that was my question, is if they have adequate depth without doing anything.
They actually do, as it is right now, but the capping strategy for the cleanup aspect may involve attenuation or capping that may affect our depth, et cetera. So those things definitely interplay with each other.
Are we going to have an interaction problem with Bornstein's floats, that they tie their boats to, double wide, triple wide sometimes there? Is that going to be an issue, or?
Currently, there's 110 feet between the two floats, between the Coast Guard's float. Let me see if I can show you this. Yeah. Yeah, handsome guy. All right, good face for radio. So this, between these two floats, there's approximately 110 feet. Again, these boats are about 45 feet wide. So, can it get skinny in there? You bet. It's such a infrequent time. First of all, that we'll have their largest boat, that 45 by 150 shown. That is their largest boat. They haven't even bid those. Matter of fact, they can't bid them in the facility they're in now, which is a nice part of this new facility. Typically, they run a smaller boat, 82 feet with about a 30-foot beam. Should be able to get through there easy enough. Okay.
Adam, if something were to go wrong and you can't get that float in place, there's other places they can do their work if need be?
There are. In terms of the fit up?
Yeah.
Yes, both. Yes, Commissioner, both on a temporary basis and a permanent basis. On the temporary basis, of course, we have a lot of opportunities in our harbor. Some are more convenient for the tenant than others. And then on a permanent basis, there are other opportunities besides clearing the waterway like that.
I mean, ideally, it's right across from their building.
Yes.
That's the best spot.
Absolutely.
So hopefully that'll work. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is one of those areas that face dock at Hilton Harbor possibly?
This, what we call the Navy Pier, if I'm understanding.
Yeah.
I got the wrong tool. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Right here is a facility we call the Navy Pier, and that is part of the consideration as well. It's sort of a plan B, honestly. Plan A would be a new facility right where it's shown.
When we talked about this before, that was Plan A, the Navy Pier.
The most convenient, because it involves mixing the tenants, is one problem with it. That's one problem. Second is the Navy Pier's in condition that it would need to be visited pretty seriously. There's actually plan and thought for the use of the Navy Pier for other development that could happen out associated with bitter end boat works, et cetera. But the prime spot, the best location for the business would be where it's shown there. The
land, the shoreside needs that they're going to want.
Proximal to their shop, no labor loss in
want for access to the float at the upper end. As you're showing it, has there been a discussion about how much land they would want there?
Yes. Besides the parcel that they would be on, they would also be leasing a space right in there. And it's for yard, it's for when they need to control that essentially, because when they launch the boat, again, it's an apartment building coming out of their building and has to turn and maneuver and then make its way on the launch route. So they need to own that and use it, and they have plenty of use for that yard. And that would be right in association with their fit-up float as well.
So on our this is probably not a question for you, but give it a shot.
Yeah.
On our super busiest days, when we've got a lot of trailers and trucks, and this is an overflow lot, the area you've got in the green rectangle, is that part of that yard usually used for parking, or is that not used?
Sylvia's done a little work on this, but essentially, yeah, it was historically.
Yeah.
We've looked at using the parking lot on the other side of this building as replacement because it's underutilized.
Yeah.
Maybe Sylvia can comment on that.
I could comment on that. The area that we typically use for overflow is right here off Bellwether, right beside Red Net. But then when it really gets busy, there is an area up along Roeder, that would be east of this site, that is available for overflow parking, and we did some maintenance work on it. And it's rare that we use this. I have seen a trailer or two parked in that area in the past, but I think that would be rare. Yeah, that's the area that Adam is circling that we would tend to use, and then the area right where the launch route goes through, right adjacent to Roeder, is used when it really gets busy.
Okay.
We also have a lot of space over here in this parking lot that's rarely used, so we might just have to do some relocation of some of the areas.
We've talked about parking quite a bit. You know, we've got an underutilized parking lot just up the street, like you said, which could also be a building, but we also need parking. And some of our parking is too far away from the buildings, so I don't know how that works either in some cases. So the parking issue for the really busy days is probably not a super big issue, it seems.
We don't think it's an appreciable issue. We think there's enough additional spacing here at Gate 9 in this overflow. Yeah, you know, this is it's the downside of development, right? Is, you know, when there's a property that's undeveloped, everybody kind of gets used to using it for various things, and all of a sudden a use comes in with a business and jobs and everything else, and everybody's like, well, what am I going to do with, I used to play baseball right here, you know, whatever it is. So this is the downside, you know.
All right, we'll manage that problem. So we have some piling that would need to be driven for this float.
You're correct.
And how's the cleanup work relate to that?
Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah, Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental Programs. That's one of the main parts of this PSA is to coordinate with that. And Anchor Environmental is a sub-consultant to this PSA, primarily for that interface, so that they are the consultant on the cleanup. They're also on the facility team. That way, that we can make sure that any design is compatible with the cleanup, and that those are informed decisions aren't being made in a silo. So yet to be determined. But there is that's the whole point of this PSA, is to get that conversation going.
On the drawing you showed, Adam, it looked like there may be 7 piles, something like that, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Sure.
Okay, whatever the number is. If it needs to be moved, you can work around the piles, so you could move the float and then work around the piles and.
Yeah, absolutely. The float would be constructed that you could unbolt it, float it off, do your cleanup. The piles would be at a sufficient depth that they can handle less soil around them, that sort of thing.
Super.
Anticipating whatever our solution is.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Back to the previous picture you had up. The pathway goes through the overflow parking lot now.
Yes.
And that will still be used for overflow parking when they aren't transiting it, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to make sure that just wasn't getting closed down.
No.
The other question I have is we got a lot of dirt to move over there.
Yes.
Where is that going to go?
Yeah, fantastic. So, it's well, there's so much I could say about this, but I won't bore you to death. There's about 46,000 yards of fill material that was taken from this peninsula, from the Belder Peninsula, and stored there for future use. And that future use is today, and that is over at the Cornwall Beach, where we're building a large park in conjunction with the city. We're actually doing the cleanup underneath the park, and they're doing the park on top of that. And that's in the R.G. Haley area there. And so the material is getting hauled to there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I was curious what we were going to do with it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I think one thing important to remember, there will be a little bit of congestion anytime there's something new like this, but it'll be so much better than what they have right now.
Oh, my gosh.
As congested as that is over there at Fairhaven. So it will be a big improvement. We need to keep that in mind when we're battling through these things.
You bet.
So, Brian, could you discuss with us this fish window issue regarding the ramp work and why we have to work within the parameters of that?
Well, Adam might actually be able to address that a little better.
I'm happy to do that. So anytime you're working below the ordinary high water mark, which is typically around 9 or 10 feet, depending where you are in the bay, whenever we're working beneath that line, we can only work within the fish windows. The commissioner may know that. And then when that fish window occurs in the calendar is dependent on what species of fish are in that area of the bay. And they all have slightly different fish windows. But by typically, we will be available to work there August 1st and could work there through February 15th. Why that affects us is because what we'll have to do to that boat launch is pull the piles that are holding the float in place. So we're already into in-water work. Move the float over and then redrive the piles in its new configuration. So that's what puts us into the fish window. Does that answer the commissioner's question?
That over answers it, but what we're in the middle of the harbor here. It's not like we're we're not. I was going to say we're not in the Cowlitz River, which is an amazing fish run up until it hits the dam. Really? No, doesn't matter. All right. Okay.
Welcome to my world, Commissioner.
And there's no change because they're existing pilings we're moving, they're not new, it doesn't have anything to do with that?
I can one better you on all that. It's over concrete. It's where we are and where we're going is over concrete. For that reason, honestly, we have great relationships with the regulators, and they're going to be very reasonable on this, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But we are under a time constraint to get it done in this upcoming fish window, so that when All American's ready to produce, we are ready with a launch route.
So 6, maybe 8 launches a year, and you said block out parking for a week.
Well, what we would do is barricade, for instance, this row of parking right through here. We would place barricades the week in advance, just like the city does when they're getting ready to sweep the streets every quarter. We would do the same thing, saying, hey, on this Saturday night, we need, your boat will be in the way, and we'll have to move it. If it's here, don't have it here at those dates. Now, if they're out fishing Tuesday through Thursday and they're back on Thursday night, we're not moving until Saturday, there's no worries for them. It's typical for work we do at airport parking lots everywhere we have congestion like this.
So if I'm understanding you right, you're not going to say you can't park there for a week, you're going to put notices up that what's going to happen in the time in that.
Target the date.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Very good.
So folks can still park, but they'll get towed? Or it's just
Well, we would just move them out of the way. Oh, sorry, excuse me. We'd just move them out of the way. Yeah.
With a bulldozer?
No. 734.
You'd hope with a sign up.
Yeah, well,
but they aren't going to.
My only concern is that sometimes the recreational uses here are going to coincide with the needs of All American Marine.
Yes.
And then we're going to be really crunched for parking.
The commissioner's absolutely correct, and there will be those moments for sure, and it's an operational issue at that point that we just need to manage well and do well with the public.
So we'll probably get it wrong once or twice, but yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's new. Let's see. Fish window, fit up location, cleanup. I had 6 questions. I think I got them all. Oh, no. Weight of the vessel.
I'm sorry?
The weight of the vessel.
Oh, the weight of the, I say it's the name of the vessel. I was going to have a lot of fun with that. It'll be, that largest one is 115 tons.
Mm-hmm. Our ramp's not made for 115-ton loads.
That's correct. That's why the PSA has all of that work in there to, well, let me say this. It has all the work in there to do that, but very frankly, I would, there will be a cutoff point that occurs early where I say I'd rather spend $1,000 on some steel plates that we pick as opposed to $40,000 understanding if I need those steel plates. Mm-hmm. I'm fully aware of that. However, what's in this PSA is kind of that incremental look that we'll pull the reins off if we sense that steel plates are simply going to be cheaper and do enough distribution.
So the trailer, it is a trailer that they're using?
It's actually dollies. They're about 6 pairs of dualies that are individually hydraulically controlled, and those are in 4 different locations under the hull. And it's quite a show, and it's sophisticated, and they remote controls, all these sort of things. Yeah.
All right. So lots of wheels. So it's spread. 115 tons is spread out.
It is.
Yeah, because we're spending. Obviously, we're going to spend much more here on infrastructure needs than we might have spent with the expansion plans we had over in Fairhaven, but in a different way. So, all right. How do you get across? What's the permanent solution when it crosses Bellwether Way? What's that going to look like?
Likely, we'll create a what's called a traffic table there, and it actually has a nice effect. What it is it's what you think. It's 50 foot along the length of the road and as wide as the road, and it's a raised section, and it actually will do good things for Bellwether Way in the sense of it's what we would call a traffic calming device. And the posted speed limit on that street is 15 miles an hour, but it's seldom obeyed. So we raise the street up, and then we take down some of the planters on either side along the path, and it's not perfectly pool table flat, and it doesn't need to be for these dollies. So, yeah.
And then in that or any location, what about underground utilities? Are we going to have to relocate anything? Or they're deep enough they can drive over anything that's already there?
Yeah, we'll do the bigger snowshoe engineering that distribute the weight sufficiently.
Well, maybe I shouldn't say utilities. So there's some water lines, for trees and things out there for landscaping that aren't that deep. But yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Anything further? No.
When do you start moving the dirt?
Yep.
Play one of yours.
For the whole project?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll be out to bid. I believe toward the end of this month. The 100% sets, I believe, come in on March 21st. We're out for bid for 3.5 weeks. And I believe it's in the middle of April that we come back to this commission, middle of April or 1st of May, we come back to this commission for a notice of award, or approval to award a contract. Gives us about 7.5 months of construction, and then you will see earth moving and a building being built.
And they'll be ready at that time to receive all that dirt down there at the park?
Yes. Very synchronized effort that I definitely want to thank Brian Gowron for doing. They've had to really go to bat with ecology. And interestingly, these regulators, they can make it very difficult on you, but also when you have a real need and a real move, they come to the table and have approved that site to receive that fill, which was a little difficult at first, but when the need got real and the deadline got real, they played ball. I'm very happy.
And it's going to be stored there. It's not actually going to be spread out and capped at that time, is it?
Both. It's for about 40 or 35 or 40,000 of those 46,000 yards we'll be able to put into its final place. About 10,000 will store there. Also will remain, but it won't be in its final resting place. It'll be a bulldozer show at some point when they finally build the park. Yeah.
If it's going in its final, when does that start?
The construction will start right around the middle of May. I'm sorry I don't have the calendar quite memorized, but I think it's around the middle of May.
In May, you're going to start moving the soil off of Hager Hill there.
Yes.
Yes. And you're going to put the majority of it in its final location down at the end of Cornwall.
Correct.
Which means you're going to have to regrade the end of Cornwall that's already there in the mountains.
No, it's not underneath the white tarps. It's actually between the white tarped soils and the railroad.
Oh.
There's actually quite a bit of 2 acres or so sitting in there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, problem solved. What was the pushback from the regulators on using the dirt or moving the dirt?
There were a few questions on the characterization of the material. Actually, it's very, very, very clean material, but as you can test lower and lower and lower concentrations, there were some detections of a variety of different things you'd probably find in any backyard, really. But so they just really wanted us to explore that and make sure that it's protective in any setting. So we really had to go through a significant amount of analysis of data, got more and more laboratory analyses, and really just the schedule we were on was very fast. So it really wasn't a pushback from them as much as it was just caution. In a typical site, you'd have a lot more time. So we were just moving at light speed, and that was what made it a little more trying.
Are there lessons to be borrowed from in this case with some other projects that we could do in a similar fashion with our regulators?
It's a good question. I think, like Adam said, actually, when we have a project that's real, they're a lot more open to working with us with a collaborative effort because they know we have an end date and they don't want to hold that up. But where we have a kind of open-ended schedule makes it a lot easier for there to be a lot more caution or ask more additional questions. So I think the lesson learned from this one was they're really open to collaborating with us when we have a defined, known project with a known schedule.
Awesome. Yeah.
Good question. we've got property on a corner of Roeder and Hilton there, and I see this pathway that's going to be used 6 to 8 times a year, goes right through that property, and it's going to kind of make that property unusable to us in the future, it looks to me like. Is this the only route we can take, or can they go down Hilton and out, down Roeder and around?
It can. There's several things on that. First of all, as shown, you can see that we sort of swing around here, and what we're doing there is avoiding the end of the waterway. What I've shown there is sort of trapezoid shape is the end of the waterway as currently owned by DNR. It doesn't make any sense because the beach is out here, and somehow this area in here is considered waterway. So there's work to do there that would take time with DNR to get that vacated, and then we could move the pathway closer in by the beach. The commissioner asked a great question, though, and that is, what is the effect of having this launch route across parcels? And that was part of the evaluation, whether there would be loss to those parcels, valuation loss because of the encumbrance. And that is a very strong possibility. However, what we think is that we don't think people will be going underground with their parking there, so they will have a parking lot. So we suspect, for instance, we suspect that there might be a building in, like that, occupying that parcel, in which case they would have their parking back here, and we would be going through their parking lot. And that would be a lease condition, or actually a lease condition that we would set on that development. We also actually evaluated 5 different launch routes. This was the first and least expensive. The second, which we've now, let me get the right tool. The second goes up and around and then down in, and that goes on Roeder itself. It involves being up on the curb and encumbering the railroad. We've met with the railroad and they're amenable to it. But it is a slightly more expensive solution because we have to mess with the street lights, et cetera, at the intersection of Bellwether and Roeder. And then solutions 3, 4, and 5 were all in this vicinity with various crane configurations and overhead rails and this sort of thing. All those were at least double the cost. Yeah.
Once again, you're only talking 6 or 8 days a year.
Right. Yeah, we honestly think it's going to be kind of a cool thing. It's kind of a parade day, and kind of
no, I wasn't trying to deter. I was just trying to figure out what we're going to do with that property. If it has to be used all the time for that route, that's what I was, and then DNR can give up that piece there out of their golden chest.
Yeah.
That would certainly help.
Well, that does bring up the issue, though, of the long planned park at the end of the waterway, though. So if it's not a park, then it's a driveway, or going to be both. And I'd be very interested in understanding how we could achieve both.
Sylvia Goodwin, Planning Director. We've talked to the city some, and we need to continue to talk to the city about this issue, but the park is not scheduled until phase 4 of the waterfront plan, which could be 20, 25 years in the future. Everybody would like to see that park built earlier. If so, there's nothing that says you couldn't do some type of a hard surface, a plaza, a patio, even something like strengthened grasscrete that a boat could go over, and when the boat wasn't there, kids could play on it. It could be a ball field. It could be a number of different things. So we believe there's solutions if the park has to double as a 6 times a year launch route.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Blacktop soccer. Yeah, hard pack clay. Don't they play tennis on clay at Wimbledon? Right. Okay. Solutions. Anything further? All right. No. Bobby? All right. I guess we are.
Thank you, Adam.
We are offering to amend a PSA for this, so we should probably take a vote. Can you reread the motion?
Authorize the executive director to execute a professional services agreement with Ashton Engineering Incorporated to provide consulting services for the INJ Street Float and Squalicum Boat Launch modifications in the amount of $117,138, plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized amount of $129,000.
Awesome. Well, I must say, I'm excited to get rolling on this and get All-American Marine moved, so. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Awesome, thank you so much. So our agenda shows us breaking at 5. We're a little bit early on this, and might have looked at our agenda and seen items 4 and 5 in the presentations after. I think we should break now, and it's. I think we're going to have a little shakedown or shake out of how this new schedule is going to work. So bear with us all, I think. But for now, we're going to recess, and we'll return at 5:30.
We have some more folks come in. I don't know if there's any more.
Not now. Yeah. All right. Reconvene and keep on rolling with the agenda. The public comment period will start first, and I have 4 people signed up. It's Paul Burrell, Paul Barlock, Dan Averill, and Todd Ellsworth. Oh, looks like 5, Mr. Carlberg. So let's start with Paul Burrell.
Port staff. My name is Paul Burrell. I'm an active commercial fisherman, boat owner, and co-owner of Sound Pacific Seafoods, and also a volunteer on the Marine Advisory Committee for the Port of Bellingham. I'd like to speak on an upcoming subject in the agenda here. It won't be discussed until the end, which is Blaine properties. One in particular, there's been a lot of discussion about is a fueling facility. While I'm not against a fueling facility, there's been a lot of talk of the port basically financing and running the fuel facility. I kind of think we're putting the cart in front of the horse a little bit here. We have some priorities with your lease tenants in Blaine. We have a serious issue with the bulkhead. Last year we had one sinkhole, took out our bulkhead, put us out of business. Luckily, port staff was very receptive and able to get out there and do a temporary patch. The patch is still there to date. We've identified a secondary sinkhole. This time it jeopardizes our power supply, which would then put us out of business for quite some time. That being said, I would implore you guys to look at using funds instead of finding new projects to do. Look at fixing the current ones we do have. I know with the fuel dock also, it's a big, the port does not want to affect private industry that much. I know that's one thing. It was discussed with the airport with the parking lot issues. Another one too. Semi-IMO does have a fueling facility on that side. I think if maybe some resolution could be made with that, with him over there, it might actually help him with business, as well as relieve the expense that the port would incur trying to do a new project, which I would really like to see money allocated towards things like our sawtooth dock that are falling apart and the bulkhead everywhere. It doesn't just affect my company, it's also all the other seafood companies up there are experiencing the same issue. It's very serious. I leave every evening with the worry the next day that sinkhole will open up and we'll lose our power supply, which would then in turn destroy all our product. It's quite serious issue. We've talked to the port staff. They've been great coming up. We've had the engineers up, but we've been told repetitively that there is no money to do a temporary fix right now. And so I'm a little bit confused as to how we could fast track a fuel dock and allocate money to that where our tenants right now are kind of being left hanging here. So I appreciate your time and thank you for the opportunity to
Thank you, Paul. Paul Barlock.
I had a question.
Oh, hang on one second, Mr. Barlock.
This is the first I've heard of this, Paul. Can staff enlighten me a little bit on what we have going on up there to correct the issue, or have we? What's going on?
Oh, I've had Brady up there. Shirley McFerrin's been great. They've all been excellent, but I know there's just been a lack of funds, and I do understand that it's tough you can't work below high tide line, and there's some other issues there, but it's a very serious issue. Last year, had we had someone on top of the area where the sinkhole went, it was large enough to engulf a car. Someone could have been driving a forklift on there. They may have gone down in there, and it was quite scary, actually. This new one is jeopardizing the corner of our dock, our 480 power, 208 power, which runs our dock, and you're aware of what we do. So we lose power, we lose water, we're done. And I can't necessarily absorb that kind of hit.
No, I understand, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah.
Adam,
So they've been great. They
you
can fill you in.
1 second, Adam. Maybe we should save this for the waterfront properties conversation regarding Blaine. Would that fit there, and we can get a little deeper in it then?
Either way, Commissioner.
Okay, let's wait till then. Okay, Mr. Barlock.
Looks like this is going to be a common topic. I'm Paul Barlock, and I thank you, with commissioners, for letting me speak for a few minutes. I'm on the Simiamu Marina Condo Board, and I'm here to talk about the fact that the fuel docks that are being considered over in Blaine, the money might be better spent, as the previous speaker had said, on other topics. As an example, we at our side of the spit have been selling fuel for 35 years, commercial operation, and feel that we're pretty good at it and pretty good at the service. We also feel that we're a private enterprise, and it would be tough to compete against a subsidized enterprise right across the pond from us. That being said, at the bottom line probably is going to come down to pricing. And one of the things that we had a board discussion on just this week is that we'd be very interested in meeting with your staff and coming up with options that allows us to optimize the operation at Simiamu to support the Blaine Marina better, whether that's a subsidized lower cost for Blaine membership or Blaine Marina people that home their boats there, or even Bellingham. But rather than look at a new infrastructure, new capital costs that could measure hundreds, if not millions of dollars, and the recurring costs of staffing and maintaining, which we already have in place, I would propose that the Commission should take a stronger look at partnering with Simiamu. And if there are issues in the Blaine Marina that we can help solve, we're more than willing to do that. In general, I also have the benefit of another club. I'm also have been and am working on the board for the Simiamu Yacht Club. And I actually have membership and had dinner with them on Saturday that house their boats in Blaine. So I understand sort of what they're looking for and would like to see in a fuel dock as well. So I think that there's a compromise position that we at Simiamu can give to the Port of Bellingham that allows you to avoid the capital costs and the recurring costs and still get to where you want to go with a fuel dock. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Dan Averill?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Dan Averill. I'm with Reisner Distributor. Our offices are in Bellingham, Linden, and Anacortes, and I'm here to voice my concerns over the Port's plan to study putting in a fuel marina in Blaine. As the previous speaker said, it's a direct competition conflict with private enterprise. I've seen in Anacortes where the Port of Anacortes put in a fuel dock and is now operating it at a yearly loss. The cost to put in a fuel dock would far outweigh any benefit to the general public. Right now, we've got the Simiamu Marina. We had the Blaine Fuel Marina, which went out of business, and the gallonage that the Blaine boating community supports would not justify putting in the expense to put in a new marina. And I'd be happy to share any numbers with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Excuse me, Dan. I had Paul in my head there. Mr. Todd Ellsworth.
Thank you, Commissioner McCauley. Other commissioners and Director Fix. Bobby, I've spoken with these gentlemen before, so a little bit more of an introduction for you and some background. In your hand, you have some materials that I'll speak to in a minute. But the foundation of these goes back to last year and the Port being one of the partners in funding a study that we did on the economic impacts of recreation in Whatcom County. We're following what's happening in Olympia with Governor Inslee's support of recreation and the value that recreation has on our economy in many facets. I'm the Executive Director of Recreation Northwest. I introduced myself, so I should start with that. Last year, we were able to go around and present our data around the value to 14 different business organizations and our funders, which also includes the city, the county, and tourism. And so together you guys funded this, and it was great to be able to go and share this information and share the value that recreation has on our economy. And so to continue the initiative that we're seeing statewide and here in Whatcom County, We expanded our already popular expo that we've been putting on for 2 years. Here's a whole list of the exhibitors we have for that in your brochure. But we added an outdoor recreation summit this year. And so I'm here to thank you as sponsors and supporters of the study last year, but continuing your support and helping us drive this conversation and this initiative to be able to start a summit. And if you look on the inside here, with the support of the port and really working closely with Dodd Snodgrass, I'd like to give a shout out to Dodd. He was awesome in helping connect us with people that became our panelists. As part of the port's economic development strategy to recognize recreation, Dodd's been a great partner as staff, working with us to help connect us with people in the industry. And so for those of you in the audience that don't have a copy, we were able to lead this summit with our opening speaker of the governor's new policy advisor for outdoor recreation and economic development, and that just set the tone for what was to come on the two panels. Dodd was instrumental in connecting us with our moderator, and I read through the rest of it.
Continue on.
May I?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. He connected us with Ray from Transition Composites, who became our moderator, to talk about the name of the panel is Made in Washington and looking at recreation manufacturing. We have great examples here in Whatcom County, but we were able to leverage Dodd's connections to bring in people from around the state. One of our panelists was another Dodd, which is weird. Not really weird, but amazing. He's the product development director for K2 Sports. And so we had not just statewide representation, but really global. And it was great to have that representation on that panel. And so working closely with Dodd to build that content and those people, thank you. And then the other panel, it was really interesting. It was more about getting people outside. And one of the focuses that we had on this, and you can see it on the graphic, is this is really something that we're trying to bring statewide. And Dodd's been sharing with people at a statewide level. We have interest from the Department of Commerce now, looking at Whatcom County for us being leaders in this initiative and driving this conversation. So thank you for your support. This was a great year. We had 80 people show up to our summit. You see the rest of the program. Our keynote speaker was the founder of Ocean Kayak that was based here in Whatcom County for years. I'm still on a high of how great this event was. We had 600 people show up to the expo Friday night and enjoyed talking with Commissioner McCauley about all the other great work we're doing. So thank you, Port Commissioners and staff, for your support of the recreation economy here in Whatcom County and Washington State.
Todd, was there a charge to go to either the summit or the expo?
There was a charge for the summit, and that was really more focused on industry folks. So for our exhibitors, it was $50. We fed them a very delicious lunch catered by Leif and Lidl. If you haven't been there, you should go. I'm still enjoying some of the leftover soup. But as a nonprofit meeting our mission, the expo is open and free for the public, and that's something that I'm excited about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, gentlemen.
And Mr. Carlberg?
Good evening. And that's the first time I've been able to say that at a port meeting in 43 years as a port customer. I want to tell all of you folks, I know there's been a little bit of disagreement as to whether evening meetings are appropriate or not appropriate, but this will also be the first time I've been able to make it here without missing work. And that's good for our economy. And I think that over time, as you are able to get the word out and get the agenda organized so that it fits the public needs, I think this will be successful for the Port of Bellingham. I think it shows respect to the public. I think it shows gratitude to the public, which subsidizes this port. And I encourage you to give it some time. It'll take a little time before people figure out that you're open in the evenings. Having said that, though, I did notice something I thought I'd pass on to you. I was in Lower BC this last weekend, and my grandparents lived up there. I spent a lot of time up there, but I was stunned at how Vancouver has moved to the border. The number of industrial parks within 10 miles of the border, I went through one after another, after another, after another, and after another. And I didn't drive that far. That's awful close to us here. And that looks like an economic opportunity from a broader strategy, as opposed to just trying to get a tenant into an empty building. But as you look out over the horizon, I'd take a drive up there and see if there's some way you can't capture some of that business in Whatcom County, because it's close enough to see from Whatcom County. Once again, thanks for the evening meeting. I think it'll be successful. I think people will support it, and I appreciate that you gave it a try. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Hey, Rob, you're going up to the Globe this week.
Yes.
Yeah. So a little bit of what Doug's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we've been pursuing economic development in Canada for probably 4 or 5 years now, increasing the focus over the last couple of years. But Globe 2016, it's an every other year event, and it starts tomorrow. The port has a trade show booth there. As far as I know, we're the only entity in Washington that has a trade booth there. The state of Washington itself has a trade booth, but there's no other government agency that does that. So.
All right. Reaching out. That was all that was signed up. Anybody else that has not signed up but does want to address the commission at this time? All right. Thank you very much. Pass that over there. And we will move on with our agenda. And that's going to be camera starting out. Diane?
A motion approving resolution number 1351, authorizing the refunding of existing general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $5,500,000.
Tamara Sobczak, Director of Finance. First thing I'd like to do is introduce 2 guests we have today. They drove up and weathered the storm from Seattle. Lindsay Sobdi is from Piper Jaffray. She's our bond underwriter. And Cynthia Weed from K&L Gates is our bond counsel. So Resolution 1351 in front of you is to authorize the refunding of the port's 2006 general obligation bonds. In 2006, when these bonds were issued, interest rates were just over 4%. As you know, interest rates have fallen substantially, and we have an opportunity to refinance and save a significant amount of money over the next 10 years. At today's interest rate, savings are currently over $700,000. Calculated as a percentage of the par amount of the bond, that's about 14%. Generally, when we look at refunding bonds, we look at a savings of 3% would be something that we would look at. So 14% is a great opportunity for the port. So if approved today, the next steps would be to complete the official statement of the port, arrange a meeting with Moody's to get an updated rating, and then reevaluate the market at that time. If rates still look good, we would move forward with bond pricing and a purchase agreement and close around the end of May. So Cynthia and Lindsay and I are available for any questions that you have. I know it's a pretty large resolution.
He likes that one.
Good work.
So the only question I've got is, if I've lent money, why would I want you to pay it back so you can save 14%? Because I'm not getting it. How does that process work?
You don't have a choice. When you bought the bond, it was callable at some point. That period expired, I think, in December of 2015. So now we're able to call your bond without your permission. Prior to that, we couldn't do that.
Okay. All right. So that,
thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Do we have,
There, take that.
do we have any bonds that aren't callable?
We do.
Yeah, Lindsay does an excellent job of staying on top of our bond portfolio to always evaluate and see whether there's any potential savings compared to current interest rates. And she does that analysis quite often, and she's determined this is the one that's eligible. I don't believe there's other ones that are eligible at this time.
And commissioners, of course, when you put a callable feature in, that affects the interest rate at sale. So
Right.
it's all part of the calculus of
Right.
somebody like Commissioner McCauley buys a bond. If it's callable, you pay one price versus non-callable another price.
Gotcha. All right. All right. Did our guests have anything to add? No? All right.
Oh, you drove all that way through the storm and... Okay, very good.
In case you have questions.
Well, if we don't have any.
Well, that's a nice savings, $600,000.
Yes.
Way to
Yes.
go.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank you.
thanks for
Good job.
working on that. That's super.
Good job as well to you folks. Thank you for the help.
You know, seriously, I know we joke a little bit about things like this, or actually we joke about it a lot, but it's a significant amount of money, and the commission here has tasked Rob with finding savings. And, you know, I think I've said this at least once this year. I'm not going to pat you on the back this time, though. You know, a lot of organizations just find savings by cutting staff. And it's folks like you that help us find savings in other ways, not just laying people off. And I really, really appreciate it. And of course, it makes Rob's job a little bit easier in some ways, but then we're going to spend that money somewhere else and spend it here locally rather than give it to the people that own the bonds. So that's great work, and thank you.
So how many man hours do you end up spending to redo all of this?
Well, I'm here anyway. It's a significant job. I've probably spent, I don't know, 15, 20 hours so far, and it's just the beginning. But it's okay.
You have to rewrite the whole FIC bond.
Just the official statement tells about the port for the investors. Just update it with current information.
Just for the commissioners to be aware, later this month, Lindsay, Tamara, and I will be heading down to San Francisco to meet with Moody's to reaffirm our credit rating with Moody's. That's part of this reissuance. We use Moody's as our credit rating agency, and we're going to go see them and tell them the port story, and they'll have a lot of questions, and hopefully we'll come out with as good of, if not better, rating.
What's the current rating for the Port of Bellingham?
I should have too.
Come on.
You know.
A1?
A1.
All right, what's better than A1?
A1 plus, come on.
Is there a better than A1? Oh, I would love, yeah, if you could explain that real quick. Somebody watching this might be interested to find out.
So this is why Cynthia said quit while you're ahead. So again, I'm Lindsay Sovdy with Piper Jaffray, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So credit ratings have, there are many different categories. The best category that's out there is AAA, and there is only one subcategory of AAA. I mean, there's only AAA. The next category down is AA, and depending on your rating agency, you're either a AA1, AA2, AA3. And then there's the A category where you're A1, A2, A3. So you're at the top of the A1 category. The A category, the next step would be to go to AA3. There aren't a lot of ports in Washington that have the AA3. Certainly Tacoma, Seattle do. I think Vancouver might be a AA3, but I actually don't think so. So,
but why would that be?
That more ports aren't higher rated? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Well, I think that there are a lot of different things that the rating agencies look at. They look at for a general obligation bond like you're doing, they look at the local economy, they look at the population, they look at the assessed value. They look at the port's financials, how much cash you have in reserves, and they have a lot of metrics. But I think if you were a city, you probably would be in the AA category because cities are considered to be more stable than ports, which rely on things like maritime and airports and I guess revenue sources outside of property taxes that tend to be more volatile than something like water sewer rates or garbage rates. So I think it really is just the variability of your revenues versus a city's.
As long as you're not refining, if you will, the bond, you're able to, well, I guess you're refinancing it, but you're not pulling more money out. It shouldn't affect our rating at all, should it?
Well, the rating agencies have the opportunity at any time to review your credit rating and determine whether they think that you should be upgraded, downgraded, or stay the same. I don't think at this point you would be downgraded. I don't think you're likely to be upgraded. I think we have
because we're asking.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Sure.
Fair enough. Anything further, gentlemen?
Once again, thanks for the hard work. $600,000 is a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's take a vote on this. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, thank you very much, Tamara. Good work. And so move to our next item. It'll be Mr. Snodgrass and Diane.
A commission motion authorizing the use of small city economic development funds for projects in the cities of Blaine, Ferndale, Linden, and Sumas.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to present the Small City Economic Development Fund Program. This is a program that was initiated in 2004. It's sprung out of our Small City Partnership Group, and the concept there was the ability as a countywide authority for the port to contribute to projects in the small cities because they're our constituents. And the project categories are in the area of planning, engineering, feasibility. It's not for construction. Objective is to help the communities to leverage capital dollars to build projects. Typically, over the last 12 years we've had the program, they're asking for about $20,000. We've spent per community about $13,800. And this year we put out $80,000 on the street for the cities to consider. The way it works, at the start of each year after the budget's approved in January, we have an application we've developed. We disperse it to each of the 6 small cities, and they apply for the project, and I evaluate them. Then we have the partnership group, which meets every month, and they kind of self-evaluate. They present to each other what their projects are and make a recommendation. And then at this time of the year, I come to you and make that recommendation. I also like to point out this is a flagship program that the Port of Bellingham started, and other ports in the state have initiated similar programs, other countywide ports. I believe Olympia does, Tacoma, and Port Angeles have been in touch with me about looking into the program. So this is since 2004, and I have a spreadsheet that I'll post on our website that categorizes every project's been supported, but we've invested over $600,000 among the small cities since 2004, matched by over $950,000 by the cities. We require at least a 1-to-1 match. And I'd like to say because the port invests a little bit of money, that they were able to get a big construction project funded, but we'll say that we leveraged it, so we're able to use our money, some of their money for engineering or other, and then they can identify that and say in a grant application or going forward to an agency and say, we're making a case for project dollars. So it's a pretty significant amount of money that's been spent in those communities since 2004. So I'll highlight very briefly three communities where we've over multiple years supported work. The city of Blaine, former airport there. Back in the day, the port supported the evaluation to look at the future use of the airport. They hired a consultant and made a determination to convert it to a business park. And over time, we've provided a little bit of funding to support the construction of the Boblet connection, the road that goes through there. And they're been doing some stormwater analysis. So over a period of time, that's to help get that project developed. Currently, the cities were looking at a broker to help them market that property. Sumas has substantial industrial area, not just the property we own. I mean, there's, I think, 300 acres gross industrial area that the city has, and they also have their own municipal utility. And so we've supported work related to some of the road work around downtown into the industrial area through Heavy Haul Road, looking at their municipal electrical system. And they've been able to leverage additional dollars for road work and construction and upgrading their substation. And the city of Linden has been going like gangbusters in their commercial development. If you haven't been up, there's a picture there of the Delph. It was Delph Square. It's the Waples building now. It's renovated after a fire through some private development. Invest in some of the evaluation work around the commercial area and commercial districts over the last few years. There was a retail trade study. We were responsible for that project getting done, but we did. And supporting engineering work that's going to connect Hannigan, it's called Riverview, forward with a $2.3 million project to increase circulation through downtown Linden Road through the downtown and create a circuit. And so this year there are 4 projects, and you have the summary in your packets, but City of Blaine, they're interested. What they came forward as a downtown assessment. They want looking at this all started out of a consultant who came through and did kind of a wayside guest visitor study around the county to see how communities looked and how welcome they were in signage. So Blaine's really hunkered down to try to improve that. They're working on some of their improvements on their storefront, and they'd like to move forward in a consulting study to kind of wrap in community sentiment with the things they'd like to do downtown and in the community. In Ferndale, this is the 3rd year we've supported a very significant project there where they want to connect Thornton Road to 2nd Avenue and the freeway. There's a roundabout there. Sampson Rope is back in there, and it's a flyover, overcrossing of the BNSF rail there. It's a fairly significant project, but we've supported the concept work, design, all the environmental review that needs to be completed. And that's a $20 to $30 million project, but it's something that Ferndale, long-term, they want to get that accomplished and it would open up a lot of commercial property as well. City of Linden, again, we'd be partnering on some of the work on downtown, looking mainly at parking, circulation, and support for commercial properties downtown and around the where the connection is going to be through to Hannigan. Preliminary engineering and permitting assistance. And SUMAS, again, they have their municipal utility. What they need to have done is some utility circuit analysis, fuse coordination, and mapping. And I guess it's all pretty crude right now. They figure out when the fuse is out. But the whole idea of this mapping work would help them to make sure that the flow of power to the industrial area and the commercial users and residents is functioning accurately. Reliability would be high. So they've asked for $75,000. We have $80,000, so we're leaving $5 on the table for something else. And with that, I would welcome your consideration and any questions you have for the projects here.
Is the consultant in Blaine going to look at the feasibility of the road being improved to the dock in Blaine?
I couldn't address the scope. I don't believe it's going to go there. But I think part of looking at the Wharf District and downtown and other needs. So I stay out of that part.
The Wharf District?
Yes, sir.
The Wharf District doesn't include that road to the wharf?
No, it does.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that part, but it's mainly the downtown connection. Yes, sir.
I have a question, Dodd. We spoke, I think it was last meeting or meeting before, about Point Roberts a little bit. Has anybody contacted you from Point Roberts from up there about requesting money?
I have not had a conversation.
So has any staff been contacted that we know of by Point Roberts?
Okay. Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, very good.
I've been thinking about that Point Roberts deal. I'd like to meet with the Canadian government and trade Point Roberts for a couple Gulf islands that we could include in the San Juans. If you're ever up talking to them,
we could just negotiate that curve they put in the line and just run it straight.
Hey, Dodd, Thornton Road. Could you skip back a slide? Thornton Road. So this has come up recently. Senator Erickson approached a committee last week to fund this entire project, and it was shot down. But I'm trying to figure out what the whole project really is. Well, you must have evaluated it, so you should be pretty familiar with it. What is it all about?
Well, so we did take the Portalway exit off the freeway, and there's a roundabout. You go towards Ferndale, and there's a roundabout, and you see a sign that says Thornton Road, and it dead ends. So there's no connection between that freeway egress with Thornton Road, which goes up to Church. So there's a major connection to the residential area, Sampson Rope, and in between there, I think it's 30 acres of commercial industrial property. Mm-hmm. And I can't speak on behalf of the city. I think it's their growth plans. They're looking at the growth of the city going north. They have a very large UGA. Their analysis is this road would create a major connection, but to get from Thornton to the roundabout, it has to get over the BNSF rail.
And then some residents, and then I-5 to the east. Okay, I'm looking at a map. Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have had I don't have an aerial, but I could get that.
That's okay. I just couldn't figure out what they were doing because you can't. It's too close to the next exit, so you certainly wouldn't be accessing it there. You'd just be getting over the freeway. That was what that was about.
Over the railroad.
Over the rail, not over the freeway. It's parallel to the freeway.
Also, they're going to spend $20 million to cross the BNSF tracks?
Well, don't hold me to twice. There's a range.
They're going to go right. If they go down, cross it right here, go right down there.
Well, that won't cost $20 million.
It's going to go over the.
Okay. All right. Okay. But they're still working on it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's a big project.
Okay, all right. Well, if the state has anything to say about it, they'll be waiting a long time because they're not interested in funding it. Thank you for that. Anything further? No? Dan? All right. Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Of what? We're not voting.
Thank you.
Got me too.
Oh, we are voting. Are we voting? Oh, I'm sorry.
Got him.
Don. I was looking down. I didn't vote. I just missed a whole vote here, and I called for the vote.
Usually we read it.
I was looking at the updates again. Normally you give us updates. It's rare that we get to vote on your stuff.
Why don't we read the motion really quick?
Reread the motion so I can actually vote this time.
Commission motion authorizing the use of the Small City Economic Development Funds for projects in the cities of Blaine, Ferndale, Linden, and Sumas.
All right, how about now? All in favor? Aye. All right.
Aye.
Sorry about that, y'all. I was totally looking at the wrong thing. Now we're going to be doing some presentations. We're going to start with Mr. Gowron and little updates on waterfronts, all the different miles that we have.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brian Gowron, Director of Environmental Programs. Yeah, this is an update on the waterfront district. The Port Waterfront District team, actually, we've come to the Commission a number of times on project-specific actions, contract approvals, very focused project-specific actions, but we realized we hadn't really done a comprehensive waterfront district update to the Commission in some time. So this is a pretty brief discussion, summary of some things we've accomplished in the past year or so, a little bit of an update on the recent Harcourt visit, and what we accomplished with that visit, and then maybe what you might expect to see in the next 6 months waterfront district. So no specific action items or direction requested, but we're happy the whole entire address any questions you might have. So just in a little way of background here, the team is here to take a figure on the right here shows the waterfront district. It's comprised of 5 primary planning areas. It makes up 237 acres all told. And up there in the purple area is the marine trades area. That is where we have boat yards, boat manufacturing, our marine trades focus. And then coming down in the blue area is the downtown waterfront. That's more of the extension of the planning areas is anticipated to be an extension of downtown, more mixed use, residential, restaurants, that sort of thing. And then moving into the log pond area in the yellow, and combined with the green in the shipping terminal is more of our marine industrial type of land. That'll be combined with the shipping terminal in order to have a large footprint that will allow us to market that property for a variety of different industrial uses. And then at the bottom there in the orange is the Cornwall Beach planning area. That's primarily city-owned property, and as we talked to previously with Adam Fulton's project, that is anticipated to be a large waterfront park. So there on the left there is just some of the discussion topics of what I plan to go over pretty briefly here, is some of the recent milestones that we've accomplished, an update on the Harcourt visit, and then what you might expect to see in the next year or so. And our entire waterfront district team's here, so if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt and we can answer those as you go. So this is kind of old news, but it actually, going back in time, the amount of time since we've done a comprehensive update, the last update we did was we were still in negotiations with Harcourt, so we have subsequently entered into and executed a master development agreement with Harcourt. And that's for the area shown in green there. That's the approximately 19 acres of property that Harcourt has the opportunity to develop. Another project that was accomplished, and this is a city project in the waterfront district, though, is the Breakwater or ASB Trail. The commissioner was there. The commissioners were there when the ribbon cutting ceremony occurred with Mayor Linville, and it's actually a very popular trail right here on the I&J. See people out there in all weathers, all time. It's an early public access trail. It's a half a mile of new trail in the downtown or in the waterfront. It actually has a small slice of access to the beach there, or the Cow Beach is what that's referred to sometimes, and it's a really popular, nice trail. The other added amenity to this is that, as you know, there's a community solar project that the iTech Energy has placed solar panels on the inside of the ASB, and there's a nice little sign that kind of describes what that project's about right on the entrance to the Breakwater Trail. Probably the most dramatic work that we've seen accomplished recently in the waterfront district is the dismantling and removal of 2 fairly substantial GP buildings that were on the GP mill property. The chipping and the barking and chipping plant, which wasn't readily visible from the most of downtown, because it was blocked by the largest structure that was down there at the time, and that was the digester building. And those two buildings were removed this past year, and so a significant amount of change in the landscape. And a thing that should be noted is that there was a significant amount of material that was retained. Not only some of the large historic industrial icons like the 6 digesters that are still standing there, but also the chipper motor, which you can see on the photo on the right there, and the superstructure that goes around that. And in addition to that, a significant amount of smaller gauges and wheels and just different historic artifacts that we could potentially reuse in development, in the parks, a variety of different things we could do with that. And it's also worth noting that that 95% of the material was either recycled or reused. Moving on to cleanup, this is a smaller scale project compared to everything else that's been going on down there, but it was an $800,000 cleanup of the Bunker C area. We removed over 3,000 tons of contaminated soil that was immediately adjacent to the Whatcom Waterway. That project not only removed contamination from an area right next to the waterway, but it also is in a footprint of where the future Whatcom Waterway Park is going to go. So that was a site preparation component that will allow the parks to come in and build over that safely and with confidence that the contamination has been addressed.
Say, Brian, in this image to the left is the creek. How far over from the creek is this hole?
It's like 20 feet. I mean, it's actually right next to the industrial wharf. It's further down. It's out in the waterway, so it's a bit into the site there, but it's right along the Whatcom Waterway. So we actually had to potentially stop the excavation just because we were worried that we might compromise the slope as we got underneath the wharf. And then actually the contamination was addressed adequately, so we didn't have to dig any further. But we were worried that we might have to stop, reevaluate, and see how else to, because we were worried that might compromise that slope.
So the last time, there was a little more of this cleaned up over by the clarifier.
Right.
So I remember seeing some photos, but I didn't see any piles like this. So is this an expectation that we should consider in the future that we're going to see a lot more of this type of thing when you're digging?
Yeah, that's correct. So that first excavation that was where the tank was at, and actually the reason that contamination for the first phase of work was because they built the tank in the 1930s without a bottom on it. So it didn't need to be on piles because it really wasn't supporting anything. They thought that this bunker fuel was so thick that it wouldn't soak into the ground, that it would just self-seal is what they called it. And obviously that didn't happen. So that excavation didn't run into any piles. But any project out here that's in the footprint of where a building was at is going to have a forest of piles that they're going to have to address. And it is anticipated in the way that the projects are structured and bid that there's no way for us to tell exactly where those are at, but we bid it with the anticipation that they'll run into subsurface structures that are unanticipated.
So this is unrelated to this actual cleanup, but could be related to other port properties with piles. What kind of shape were those piles in?
That's a good question. A fair amount of these piles that they ran into in the Whatcom Waterway project is maybe another good example. They were in really good shape. Then they pulled them out, and they still were untreated, and they still had the bark on them. And but they weren't really built with the same rigors that would be required, so they were a lot shorter than might be necessary. So reuse of them was difficult, and they were in a contaminated area, so we couldn't really reuse them.
Well, I wouldn't be worried about reuse, but just understanding we've got some others that are down there, but this gives us a great opportunity to sort of excavate and see what these piles have how they've lived their lives. Sure. And it would give us a good idea about the other piles we have in different places.
Yeah, so, yeah. And I know on the one of the projects I'll talk about here in a minute was the granary building. The Harcourt's looking at that and looking at the conditions of the foundation, and there was a port Harcourt coordination where we actually exposed some of the piles underneath the granary building to do an integrity test, and they look like they're in really good shape.
Awesome, great, thanks.
And then the next few slides are focused on the Whatcom Waterway Phase 1. That's the other, then of course, major project that's been underway on the waterfront district. And I think John Hergesheimer might be frustrated that I distilled a $30 million plus project down to 3 concise bullet points. But essentially,
Okay, Brian, I went home.
that project removed over 100,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediment, a significant amount of shoreline debris removal, creosote piles along the shoreline, kind of unengineered and poor salmon habitat conditions along the shoreline, clean that up, and then replace that with a variety of different modern material, marine infrastructure, as well as softer bank habitat that is more suitable for salmon habitat. And these next few photos were really pretty cool. And this is Mike Hogan's genius at work. We've been working with the Department of Ecology to document this whole entire project, both through time-lapse photography as well as aerial drone photography. So there's some really cool photos and some project summary that'll come out of this once this whole project's wrapped up. But in this photo, you can see this is the dredging operation underway. The clarifier structure, the former clarifier structure was here. This is the shoreline that has been subsequently removed, and that whole vertical bulkhead is now a softer bank shoreline. Mm-hmm. And then this is a pretty neat one, same technology of the capping on the inner log pond. And this is not an area that's really usually observed from the Rotor Avenue, so it's not very high visibility, but you can see this entire log pond was capped, and then this was the starting of the armoring of the shoreline as part of the environmental cap.
Hey, Brian, I got some crap from people for bringing this up a couple of years ago, not here, but there was a log boom used to sit in there, and it's the harbor seals like to sit with their pups.
Right.
Any conversation about that kind of habitat in the future?
You know, that log boom was designed specifically for a couple of reasons. One was to keep folks out of there because it wasn't fully cleaned up yet, kayakers that could come and go. It was also to prevent logs from washing in, just stray logs coming in and getting in underneath the dock of the wharf and banging around and doing damage underneath the GP wharf. That log, with the cleanup, the log boom is not going to be anticipated to be replaced. It has been wrapped around this wharf structure, though, is to still protect logs from getting under there and doing any more damage. So the seals do haul out on that log still, even right there. I had a picture in this presentation I removed of seals hauling out on that right next to the wharf. So we've done a few studies on that, and there are actually we're working with Western Washington University biology department. They have a seal observation program that we allow them access to count seals, and they're very opportunistic. They have lots of different ways that they do it. They come and go seasonally, and there's not been any indication that any of these projects have had an impact on them at all. And we think that there are plenty of opportunities for haul-out locations. That doesn't mean that there couldn't be an opportunity to create another, an artificial area. Mm-hmm. That'd be a separate project that we could look at.
Well, I will say, as we open this up more, it's what a friend of mine used to call charismatic macrofauna, right? You see the pups, and if you sneak up to the edge of the wharf, you can see them sometimes before they jump in.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things that it's sea life that actually got out of the sea, and you can, I think kids love that sort of thing. So.
No, I agree. Very cool. Yeah. So that's a kind of a summary of where we've been, what we've got accomplished. This is now moving into a little bit more on some of the more recent activities. As you know, Harcourt was in town last week. We had a very productive set of meetings. Here's just a brief summary on what we worked with them on. The port's primary goal was to finalize the purchase and sale agreement of the granary building. So we were as part of the master development agreement. That was a component of that agreement. Then we had to move forward with the actual creation of a parcel, lot line adjustment, doing some of that work, and finally now we're in the final phases of working on actually transferring that property to Harcourt. So we worked through some of the minor details of that, and we hope in the very near future we'll actually transfer that property to Harcourt. Another key component was coordination with Western Washington University, primarily regarding the board mill building. As you might recall, the 6-acre footprint of the Western Crossing area includes part of the board mill building, and we'd been working for years with Western to see if they were interested in adaptively reusing that. And really, from day one, there hasn't been a lot of interest on Western's part to reuse that building. However, Harcourt has expressed a significant amount of interest in that, and so we wanted to meet with Western, determine if there was a path forward on maybe modifying their footprint or working with Harcourt collectively so that building could be built into to Harcourt's plans. And it was a very productive meeting. There'll be some formal action that'll have to be taken on that with a little more detail, but I think we're moving in the direction where that building could be adaptively reused and designed by Harcourt. And then the last really major component we wanted to do was make sure that they had an opportunity to work with the City of Bellingham. The city, as you know, is designing the key roads and utilities and infrastructure and parks in the waterfront district, and a big part of that is how they interface with the development. So we met with the city on the parks layout, the road design, got input and back forth with the Harcourt, and another just really productive meeting. I think we've got some direction that the city and Harcourt and the port are all comfortable with. And some small parts of this were also working through whether or not Harcourt would be interested in pursuing a micro hydro utility or a district utilities, and that's definitely on their radar, and the city's public works department's working closely with them for those opportunities. The last thing that Harcourt did, which was, kept us out of the room, but they met with a lot of private companies here, which was great. They were looking at meeting with tenants. They had a lot of private meetings with potential customers. I don't know who they were, but it was great. They were busy the whole time, and they were making a lot of local contacts, contractors, tenants, potential partners, and that sort of thing. So all around, a really good meeting. So then now switching gears to what we might see happening here in the next 6 to 12 months. This is focusing on the marine trades area. Obviously, we had a pretty detailed discussion on the All-American Marine Project. I don't need to really probably talk about that anymore, but I'm happy to answer any questions. That's something that we'll be seeing happening in the very near future. And then on the south side there, on the opposite side of the peninsula here is the C Street Terminal. And that's another marine trades project that's close to the Colony Wharf area where we're doing some significant stormwater upgrades, taking overhead power that's kind of an obstruction to moving boats around and putting that subsurface to make more open access, and also making this an overall more usable marine trades facility. And then another area that you'll see a significant amount of change in the landscape here in the coming months is what we call the pulp and tissue mill area in the cleanup world. It's also the majority of it's the downtown waterfront planning area, and it is the area highlighted in green there. We have an environmental capping project that we're be undertaking here this summer that will cap with a gravel fill, a minimum of 2 feet thick throughout that whole green area, and it's going to not only change the environmental cleanup requirements, but it will address accessibility. It'll change kind of from that industrial war zone look to a much more uniform, usable, and accessible area. And that we anticipate will be done this summer.
Brian, are you going to use some of the recycled product that's sitting there in the piles?
Yeah, that's right. We anticipate using all of that material that's been recycled from the demolition of the buildings and the shoreline debris, incorporating that into the environmental cap, using that to establish grades so drainage will occur appropriately, no ponding, and just open space of water, and then topping that all off with a they call it permeable ballast, but it's kind of a crushed rock surfacing. And we also we'll have a couple drive routes that will allow us to have safe access throughout the site, and then we can decide if there's interim uses or other things we can do.
And the brick, Hergersheimer was worried about the brick being light. Is it too light to incorporate into this? Are we going to be able to do that?
Yeah, we thought that we could. We looked at that, and we thought that it would be geotechnically suitable to use. Yeah, cool. And then the other thing worth highlighting here is that this green area is the area where we're going to have the major grading plan, and then this will be more of a patchwork of as you get further and further from the downtown. It's going to be more of a patchwork of pavement, and as development occurs, it seems more appropriate that would be cleaned up and made more presentable as development moves from the downtown towards the south there.
Brian, when we're capping this, are we incorporating for sea level rise? Are we raising this up?
Yeah, exactly. That does it twofold. Two benefits is that it caps it for the environmental purposes, brings it up for sea level rise considerations. That's consistent with what was evaluated in the environmental impact statement for the waterfront district. And the roads design is also incorporating that. So then the road design comes up even further on top of the cap. So the final finished grade of the developed site will be much higher than what even the cap brings in.
Very good. Thank you.
And then lastly is the well, not last, but one of the last projects here is the granary project. That's Harcourt's first development project. They have a plan they've submitted for the shoreline permits, and they've received those. They are in for the building permit. As you can see, they anticipate a mixed use of office space, retail, restaurants, open seating, dining on the outside, right along the waterway. So it's a really, really nice plan. I think they've got some really good ideas, and they're really excited to get that one going. And as I indicated before, we've done some geotechnical work to make sure that still works. I think they have a couple building permit issues to work through, but they're working really collaboratively with the city on that one. And the other component of this, reason I didn't call this the granary building is because it's actually more of a phase 1 granary area project that also is coordinated closely with the city's Granary Avenue access point, as well as the first phase of the Walk and Waterway Park, so that they are not multiple construction projects going on right when they want to open up for outdoor seating, and you've got a bunch of dirt work going on right next door. So it's a really coordinated project with the city team.
So how quickly can the city get Granary Street built behind what we're looking at here so that Central can be open?
They're looking at, they anticipate this whole area, this is of course subject to change, but I think that the schedule is looking for spring, summer of 2017 to have both the Granary building open, the first stretch of Granary Avenue accessible, and the first phase of Walk and Waterway Park open. So that's an ambitious schedule, and I think it's doable though, and I think the whole team is pushing really hard to get that accomplished.
So has the city settled on a final design for the first part of the Walk and Waterway Park?
No, they haven't. They are fully engaged with their landscape design architects right now, though. They're working that right now. They have a basis of design on what they were giving them direction to consider, and they're now working through the first phase of detailed design, and they'll have a series of public input on that design.
And then funding, I didn't get to bend Leslie's ear at Parks on this the other night, but is there funding set aside already for this as well? So they're going to,
They do. The city parks team, the city roads have funding for their infrastructure and road. The city parks team has limited funding from a brownfields redevelopment grant. Okay. And then they also do have parks money. I don't know exactly what it is, but they have budgeted enough to do this first phase, and that's kind of where they're drawing the line, is what they think they can actually build.
And the first phase is just past the clarifier almost up to the end of the wharf?
Right. Yep. Correct.
Okay. Oh, quick question on that too. The short bulkhead right next to the parking lot, at the underneath, right, actually below Central Street, that bulkhead was not removed.
Correct. Yeah, and that's the one that actually it's on our radar to discuss with the Parks Department. The capping of the Walk and Waterway. I don't have a good aerial of that one, but the capping of the Walk and Waterway does wrap around, and then there will be some capping up to a portion of that bulkhead, and then there'll be about 2 feet of the bulkhead, I think, sticking out where the park will interface. So I think that's one of the design components I want to have some discussion with the city team on, because it's a question on how that will be managed.
All right. So if you could carry this message, which I've shared a few years ago, was this would be a great spot for launching paddle craft.
Sure.
So if there was some sort of access like that right here, that'd be a great spot for it.
Yeah.
I think further down, I think you start getting into different hard designs that the Parks Department's going to be building. And then, of course, you got the wharf and the pier, which is not really something you can launch a paddle craft from. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'll pass it on.
Thank you.
Yep. And then not to forget about our industrial side of the waterfront district. A lot of focus, obviously, on the downtown and on the marine trades. But Dan Stahl will continue to work to pursue log pond tenants. That is a big asset that we want to make sure we market and pursue a variety of different manufacturing, industrial type of tenants in the log pond. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Bobby? Good. Dan?
I really don't have any at this time. It was great getting together with Harcourt the other night. They're really aggressive. They seem like a great bunch of guys. They really like the community, and they're moving forward, and I'm pleased with them.
Yeah, it's great. I think they'll have continue to have more and more of a presence here. I think they wanted to start to get these projects off the ground, and then we'll be seeing a lot more presence of Harcourt in town.
Cool. Brian, can you go back to the slide just before this one? That ramp I see right there, who owns that ramp?
That's a good question. Dan, do you know?
Dan, do you know who owns that ramp?
Dan Stahl, Maritime Director. That ramp actually came up with the barge that's owned by Linden.
That's a Linden barge?
Correct.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. We need more Linden barges. Here.
Boys are back in town.
There you go. Okay, thanks. And then, Brian, if you could go back.
Excuse me, Mike, while we're there, when you're referring to that as the log pond tenants, that's not the log pond?
Correct. Sorry, that's the shipping terminal.
Okay.
And I collectively call the log pond area, the industrial area. But yeah, correct.
That's a tenant loading at the stub pier.
Right.
Correct.
A log pond tenant loading at the, okay.
Yeah.
That's sort of log pondish, yeah. Can you go back, it's maybe 8 slides back, maybe not that many.
Can you give me?
Go back, go forward. What's forward versus back? There's one shot from the rotor side of the granary building that looks all the way down the waterway. Yep, I'll go probably the other direction. Yeah, other direction.
Not that one. Not that
one more.
Oh, there you go.
That one. Okay. So Central Street in the lower right becomes Promenade. Essentially remains as it is there. I'm assuming that the guardrail changes out to some sort of a more suitable, softer rail for people to access. And then, although it looks like it's at the same elevation, that lower area just to the edge of the Central Street, all the way down to the end of the GP Wharf. That's the entire area that the city will be building out as part of their park right away.
The city anticipates building out the first phase of Whatcom Waterway Park, is what they call it. Is that it's going to include making this a pedestrian access only. They'll obviously beautify that a bit, have some design components to it that will be neat. And then have a public access part that comes down to here. It's really the first phase of the park will probably stop somewhere around here, which is in the transition of what would have been just on the back side of the clarifier building. And this one, this is maybe a good one. This is the Central Avenue access. Park will wrap around down here and probably stops. And here's that Bunker C dig that you were referring to that did not have piles in it, and it'll probably end somewhere around here. Okay. So it's just a first phase of public access right along the waterway.
So one of the things we talked about maybe a year or so ago was incorporating the GP Wharf and Pier into the park itself. And I know Parks Department wasn't really interested in owning that particular structure. But then some other things came up with regards to the suitability of that structure to serve a log pond tenant and loading there, because there's some. Am I recalling correctly, Adam? There's some problems with the pile and the structure itself, but it's suitable for pedestrian access. I'd very much like to engage the city in having a conversation about that, because I know it's unlikely we're going to invest any money to make it suitable for a log pond tenant to load something heavy across that. But I think as a pedestrian access point to continue to park, it's a really great asset. And secondarily, if we keep it, then we can still use it to tie vessels up. So I think there's opportunity there.
Yeah, we've had conversations with both the city and Harcourt about that. I think at a minimum, we would skinny that pier up and make it be it's a third of the current width, and it doesn't have to be a skookum because you're not driving vehicles or trucks on it. But yeah, those are definitely conversations that have been had, and I think everyone's of the same thought on that. But we need to do some further work and bring it back to you all for approval.
And I'm very interested in making sure that I imagine all three of us are that we can still use that for vessel tie-ups in the future. And I don't know how that would be managed with people out there, but I think it'd be really cool. Just
we would have to consider the depth changes if we skinnied it up.
Right. One of the ideas is to put some floats off of that pier too. There's a number of drawings where they have 3-4 floats coming down off of that you could tie up to as well. Obviously not as large of vessels, but.
Oh, and then one final thing, since Parks had shown a few drawings with a float, and it was lining up directly across from the barge loading area at the terminal. It might be a little tight with a 300-foot barge to get that float with
Sure.
boats tied up to it and barge traffic in the same spot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And those drawings were purely conceptual, but that's a really good point of worth once they get into design. And that float is actually a visitor moorage float that the port would be. That's an amenity to the park, but in the interlocal agreement, the port designs and installs any marine infrastructure. So that's actually on our side, including the design. But we were looking at where is the appropriate depth, and so that's kind of the area that it landed on. But you're right, the traffic would definitely have to be taken into account there.
Thank you.
Where was that going to be located?
Well, if you see here in the word terminal, the conceptual drawings had right across from that a float with, so I think there were actually a couple of different locations, but it's a little, Adam, you may know this, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a little over 400 feet across, I think, right now.
Yeah, we would definitely take barge traffic into consideration before we put a float in that area. The drawings were done by an architect that really doesn't understand.
Yeah, it's totally fine. The issue was if you had a 300-foot barge and you're pushing it, you got because right now
It probably wouldn't work there.
Well, right now I've seen barges getting pushed in there, and you can see that the wash coming out the back of the barge is right up underneath the pier. So thanks. Okay. Anything further, Dan?
No, I thought you were going to pull up your seals again, and I wanted Bobby to comment on that salmon trying to run the gauntlet to try and get up there.
Well, I was going to comment, but I didn't want to get tomatoes thrown at me. But it's kind of like we'd be building a feeding zone for the fish trying to go by.
That's right.
They're already there.
I was hoping we could have some discussion on that.
Were you just trying to see the red go up or what?
Not new seals. It's just for the existing. They're grandfathered in. So
we can grandfather them further out.
Okay. If nothing further, I guess thank you so much for that, brother.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, and then an update on Blaine. And I think there's going to be a fuel dock question about this.
Yeah, we have, so we got two presentations on Blaine. One is regarding the fueling facility. We'll start with that one.
Okay.
The fueling facility, what we're talking about here is strictly the operations of the facility. We don't have an idea yet of what the capital cost would be. We have an engineering condition survey being conducted, and that'll tell us the condition of the tanks and the lines and all the other infrastructure that need to be installed. So we're doing this kind of without knowing what our capital costs will. So if you bear with me on that. The assumptions for coming up with the operations was the exact volume that the tenant was doing prior to leaving, and that was 80,000 gallons. We assumed 80% of that was diesel, 20% was clear, and that the facility would operate 7 days a week. And you see the hours there. Everything in there, pretty much, days a week operation stuff would be test cases, and we would adjust as needed based on what the demand is. Some of the other assumptions, again, we don't know what the capital costs are. We do know we need some pumps and dispensing equipment at a cost of about $100,000. We believe the fuel lines under the road are new, so those are being in shape, but the tanks are very old. And again, we're doing a condition survey there. Labor, we're pretty much going to use existing staff for the off season, but during the peak summer months of May through October, we would have seasonal staff hired. And again, this would be a very trial basis thing. If we hired staff in May and determined that they weren't needed, the next May, we would not hire them until June. So we'd do this until we got it right. We'd adjust it till we got it right, excuse me. So here's the financials from that operation. Again, the markup at the top there is 70 cents, and that's based on what Edmunds marks up theirs. We did a survey of a number of different marinas to find out what their markup was, and we chose Edmunds as being most similar to ours. So whatever.
That's 70 cents a gallon?
That is correct. So whatever our cost of gallon of fuel would be, we would mark that up 70 cents. We'd use the 80,000 volume here. That's the first column. The middle column there shows a 70 cent markup, along with the amount of volume it would take to come to what we believe is a break even. Keep in mind, we spent $100,000 in capital. We amortized that over 5 years. So you'll see a cash flow in that column of 20,000 because that's 100,000 divided by 5. The third column, farthest to the right there, shows what the markup would have to be at 80,000 gallons to get to that same break-even picture. So you'll see the revenue varies based on how many gallons in the markup. Our cost of sales are in there, leaving us a margin that I think is roughly about 30% or 31% of what the sales were. The payroll in there is the seasonal payroll. It's the seasonal help, that May through October number. We have other costs in there, and those include, on the bottom there, you'll see advertising, insurance, operating supplies, rent, equipment, maintenance, utilities, credit card fees, and business and occupation tax are all lumped into that other category. We will provide a further breakdown of that if needed, showing the detail of that. And then we have depreciation of that equipment, that $100,000 worth of equipment we bought. So in the what we call the base case, which is 70-cent markup, 80,000 gallons, our net income is negative 35,000. That's not cash flow because you'd have to add back that depreciation, but the cash flow would be negative 15, which is obviously not going to pay back your 100,000 of equipment costs.
Hey, Rob.
Yes, sir.
You're in the 7-cent markup category there, right?
This is supposed to be 70. So yeah, I missed a decimal place there. The middle column says 70 and the first column should say 70 as well. That's a good catch. So there's two cases at 70 cents, one at 80,000 gallons, which we believe is realistic. And then we did a break even at 141,000 at 70 cents. Then we went back to 80,000 of volume and we got to $1.16 a markup.
Okay,
so
right.
sorry for that confusion.
Okay, thanks.
So again, we don't know what the capital costs are. We used 100,000. We believe that we can get to, a loss of about 15,000 a year on this, but I think that's probably the best case scenario on this. And we will come back to you after the engineering survey is done on the tank condition. Adam, do you know approximately what date that is?
It should be the next 2 weeks. We had the survey done last week, and now we're just waiting for the report.
Thanks. And while you're at the podium, can you pull up Google Earth and kind of show the Blaine Marina and Semiahmoo, if you can, if you will?
And so these are revenues and expenses based on the setup costs. What was the setup cost?
$100,000.
Just $100,000.
Yeah, $100 for the nozzles and some of the distribution equipment.
So that means the tanks would have to be in operable condition.
That's correct. Otherwise, those costs are going up. I believe those costs probably will go up a bit. We're just not sure what extent they'll go up.
I see you had 24,000 in there for other, and that includes all the environmental permits and all that stuff that you have to do annually.
Yeah, we believe so. We need more investigation on that. This was a rough, swag scientific wild ass guess, but that's what we came up with in the short term. But we will look into it further and figure out exactly what those requirements are. But we do have a pretty good number in there for that type of annual testing and calibration of the equipment. It's about $5,000 of that 24.
I was talking to Jay Bornstein, who used to fill over the dock the fishing boats when they were dropping their fish off, and he got out of the business of doing that because the insurance was just so high, and the liability of spilling fuel from a pier down, that he just chose to no longer do it.
And we do have insurance in here. We believe our insurance will only go up about $1,000 a year, but we also buy, $1 million of insurance a year. So we're a little different than someone like Mr. Bornstein when you add this on to our insurance. But you're correct. That would be a cost.
The pay for the payroll thing, I mean, for a part-time person, that seemed kind of high.
I have a breakdown of that. It's the actual payroll itself is only about $30,000, and then you throw benefits and payroll taxes on top of that. That's how you get up there.
How long was that person for? That's not even around. That's
May through November.
They were May through October, and they were there for, I believe, 8 hours a day. I don't remember the exact hours, but I can certainly look that up.
When this subject first came up, I didn't weigh in on it because I hadn't really seen the operation at Semiahmoo in a long time. And so I went up and looked at their operation. Can you pull that back a little? Whoop.
There you go.
Yeah, so can you focus in on their fuel dock there? Let's see.
I don't know where it is.
Over in
The long dock there.
Yeah, okay, there it is.
It's in the lower right corner, Adam.
One boat on it right there. Yeah, okay. So that you come across and into there. That's a really long dock. And they've got, I think, 2 diesel and 1 fuel, or 1 gasoline, and it's non-ethanol.
Right on that?
On that. That's where they fill their boats from.
I thought they were further in over here.
No, it's on this side. Gets a little shallow over there. Can you back out to where we can see Blaine and this dock at the same time? There, perfect. So that shows how far away our fuel dock is. And I really didn't weigh in on this when it first came up because I hadn't really looked at the fuel facility in Blaine that close, or wasn't sure what Samiama had. There are two reasons I think the port should be involved in a fuel dock. One is if we get a private sector person that'll come run it, we should, I feel, lease the property to them. Free enterprise, sorry, Samiamo, but if someone wants to compete with you, they should be able to do it. And then the other time that I think we should be involved in having a port fuel dock is if Samiamo leaves or we can't fill over the dock. But with either of those not happening, I'm really not in favor of the port competing against a private sector to just divide the pot a lot smaller. I met with Mike Dodd, who owned that facility for 30 years up there. He informed me there used to be 3 fuel docks up in Blaine years ago. And when it got down to just his fuel dock, the most he ever did was 1 million gallons in a year. And his last time was 80,000 gallons. That's a huge drop. I just don't, I would rather take our resources and put them into structures such were mentioned earlier that are bulkheads that are failing and all the other issues that we have in Blaine that we'd want to spend money on. Now, that's not to say, I guess I would feel the same way if capital costs came back at $1 million like they did in Anacortes, or if they came back to be very little. I still don't see what reason we would want to compete with the private sector. Looking at their pricing's about the same. They are $1.99 on diesel, and I think they're.
I have a survey here of some pricing that we conducted on, this was February 2nd, so it's a little dated here, but we had Semiahmoo at $2.81 for diesel. At the time, $3.69 for gas. I believe they dropped that significantly since then. Bellingham was $2.24 for diesel, $2.97 for gas. Anacortes was $1.95 for diesel, $2.76 for gas. Edmonds was $1.96 for diesel, $2.78 for gas. So it seems like everyone's right in that $1.90 to $2.20 rate for diesel, and then in about $2.70 to $2.90 for gas.
I got my information from Doug Romano on the phone. I just met him here in between the break. Doug, what are your prices up there now?
It's $1.99 for diesel and $2.99 for gas, which is clear 90 octane.
So if we added 70 cents to the $1.16, you know, the big difference is fueling over the dock. If we weren't able to do that, that would make a huge difference. And that's why I asked our legal gentleman if he, Frank, if we could outlaw fueling over the dock and do it just from our facility. But the more I think about that, I wouldn't want to do that because that's the cheapest way a fisherman can get his fuel, or a large power boat. They buy it from, I imagine they buy it from the gentleman that talked earlier. They bring the fuel truck down and they either fill a fishing boat or fill Samiamo or fill the porch tanks. That's correct. So I'm not sure we want to say no to it right now if we're waiting. Although I don't care what it comes back. I can't see a reason to do it. I'm thinking maybe we should wait another 2 weeks and find out what the capital costs are and how good the tanks are. But my feeling is going to be the same if we can use the tanks. Why do we want to compete with the private sector?
Just to answer your question, Commissioner, the port has complete discretion, the commission does, to pass whatever rule it wants about over-the-dock fueling, including whatever insurance requirements, indemnity requirements, licenses you want. So you have complete discretion. and then you can go into the fueling business if you want, and you don't have to lease property to anybody else to compete with you. But that's the legal issue. So it's a wide open field, ready for your sound judgment on what you want to do as a commission.
Sure. Well, in talking with Mike, the 80,000 gallons is what he did the last year he was there. So I think that number that you used is a good number. But boy, that's not much. And when you consider Costco does 35,000 gallons a day and we do 80,000 in a year, that's roughly 3 days. We're probably not going to get as good a price. One thing that Mike did say, Mike Dodd, and also Mr. Romano said the same thing, and that was that both of you were very competitive when he was open. And so I just can't see dividing the pot more and jumping into something the private sector can do just as well.
Hey, Andy, do you remember what the labor assumptions were for your temporary help? What hours they were there?
Yeah, Andy Peterson, Harbor Master at Blaine Harbor. The labor assumptions for the summertime were 10-hour days to make sure we were covering, making sure that anybody coming in early in the morning or leaving would be able to fuel up. So we had 10-hour days during the summer.
Thank you. So there again, that's on the conservative side. So if we found out the guy was sitting around not doing anything for 2 hours in the morning, we'd have him start coming in 2 hours later. So.
And when we're going to do this, are we going to fill, if we did this, would we fill from the pier or would we have a low dock like they do?
Yeah, that all would be determined as we investigated the best way to do this. Historically, it was done on a float, and someone would hand a nozzle down. It wasn't a practice that was probably ecologically friendly, so we'd have to look into that, and we try and figure out a method that would work best.
Okay, well, that's my 2 bits worth.
Well, I don't look at this as competing with the private sector. And we had a fuel dock in our harbor. It's a service. When Mike Dogg was there, he was truly competing with Semiahmoo. They were competing amongst each other with nothing there. There was no one to compete with Semiahmoo, and the prices will probably be whatever they put them at. So with no competition, fleet is a service to our commercial fleet. That's what I'm interested in. The people are going to be paying more money for their fuel. Okay, gas is the issue. You can't put gas out of a truck into the boat. That's the problem. Probably 75% of the tribal fleet that fishes out of Blaine is gas. Okay, I feel there's a need for a fuel dock in our harbor. It's a service. It's a port service, really, in my mind. Now, with the numbers that are here, it's very obvious that the private sector can't come in there and operate a fuel dock. It's just not feasible for the private sector. They're not going to make any money. I mean, the numbers were up there. We may lose money. We don't know. In regards to what Paul's asking, I'm very sympathetic, Paul, that we need to get that fixed. It was not my intent when I brought this up is to divert money away from any projects that our tenants need to have done. This is the first I've heard of it. I wasn't after a lot of money to do this. I want to do it as cheap as possible. It's a kind of an interim thing to see if it would work to service our fleet, both fishing and recreational. Part of the problem with the gallonage is we have no fleet up there because we've let our infrastructure and we've let that harbor go to hell. And nobody wants to go up there and do business. If we put it back together, people are going to come and do business there. I was there in the heydays when he was selling that 1 million gallons and the fleet was big. You got to have something for people to come there to use. If you don't have a fuel dock and no one can fuel up there, they're not going to come in there. They're not going to come there because the gentleman from Semiahmoo has a fuel dock across the way. If you've got a fish operation like Paul's, they can come there and they can fuel up without a truck coming up or whatever. The fuel dock's there. It's going to be used. I believe that gallonage thing you're seeing is the worst you would ever see there.
Well, the reason Mike got out of the business was because the fishing fleet was depleted somewhat, and then he couldn't sell enough fuel, so he got out of it. I think by putting fuel dock back in isn't necessarily going to bring the fishing fleet back, That being said, the recreation, Andy, how many boats compared to a year or 2 years ago in recreational boats are gone from Blaine? We have some empty spaces up there now, don't we?
Yes, we do.
How many?
Probably 100, maybe 100 recreational slips right now. And part of that's due to the fluctuation with the Canadian dollar right now, strength of the Canadian dollar.
And that's about $3,000 a year average on a slip. So are we talking a loss of $300,000?
In real rough numbers.
Yeah.
Is that 20% of your slips? I don't know the exact mix anymore.
I believe there's about 800 slips in Blaine.
Down
It's down
100.
to 700.
629. It's 629 in Blaine.
Is, in my mind, when we put the infrastructure of Blaine back together at the Blaine Harbor and we rebuild it, it's one of the things we're going to need there. As we try and get more business for Paul and the other businesses are there by putting the infrastructure back together, the shipyard, the fuel dock, everything that was there before, it's going to come back. Things will come back. And if you don't have services, people won't come.
Were the services good a year ago when Mike had it?
Mike was always there. If you needed fuel, Mike could give you fuel. And the problem was that there wasn't enough boats there. I mean, for myself,
So why are they going to come back now? There's 100 more missing now than there
well,
were.
recreational, yes.
Right. Well, they're buying fuel too,
Right.
are they not?
The recreational is probably going to depend on the economy, whether people want to own a boat and park it in a harbor. I mean, I think we're seeing a downtrend in that everywhere, really.
How many purse seiners do we have in Blaine now? Andy, do you know?
Right now today, I think we're at 12 seiners in Blaine.
I talked to what was his name? Wilson, a tribal member, Dana Wilson, who has 4 boats in Blaine, 2 32-footers and 2 smaller, I think, gill netters, and his kids run them. And I asked him if a fuel dock, first of all, if it has to be subsidized, I assume it's going to be subsidized by the marina, not the taxpayer. I guess I need to ask that question. Would this come out of the mortgage model rate?
That was
a loss.
That was how we would design it, yeah, so that it would be contained within the mortgage model.
So the Bellingham boaters would pay for it as well as the Blaine boaters?
I think anyone who owned a slip or rented a slip from the Port of Bellingham would be somewhat contributing to that.
All 2,000 slips.
We don't necessarily track things separate from Blaine and Sammamish.
Right. And he told me that he would rather see us do a lot of infrastructure and clean up in Blaine than put a fuel dock in. He would just soon go to Sammamish if they're competitive. And
there lies the key thing.
Well, $1.99, that's kind of what we came out in my rough math of $1.1670.
Yeah, I pulled up a more current survey where Sammamish was done on the 25th of February, and we had $1.99 for diesel and $2.99 for gas. In Bellingham, we were selling $2.24 for diesel, so Sammamish was actually under by a quarter under Bellingham. Now the Bellingham gas price was $2.97, so they were 2 cents over on gas. So it kind of flip flops.
And Doug, did you say, or am I mistaken, a long time ago on the phone, that you give a discount to large volumes of diesel?
Not only that, but we also give a commercial discount.
Can you use the mic there, because this is on recorded and you can't hear it?
Any commercial boats that come in get a 20-cent per gallon discount as well as a volume discount. At 100 gallons, they get a 10-cent discount, and then at 300 gallons, they get another discount. I think it's another 20 cents.
So if I came to tomorrow and bought 1,000 gallons of number 2 diesel from you, what would it cost me?
If you were going to buy 1,000 gallons, you'd call me on the phone and you'd tell me that, and then we would negotiate that. But typically large volumes like that, we're at about 25 cents over whatever our cost is.
From the distributor?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's an important number to know, I think. What would that number be if Bobby called you tomorrow to fill his fishing boat up? If you're too, and I'm not trying to find out what your costs are, but
Well, my
They're going to be
distributor,
the same as the port, so we'll find out sooner or later.
my distributor is sitting right next to me.
I was going to say, ask him, he'll tell you what the wholesale price is.
Exactly. So I would look at what our rack price was for that day, and then we would cost it out at 25 cents over that.
Just to add to that, on the topic of the cost, since we're a condo association, all of our numbers are public domain. So we have no problem sharing with you how many gallons we sold last year, what our markups are, what our cost structures are. Those are all things, if you want to put it in your model in comparison, I get, as a member of that condo association, I have it on my computer. So it's not anything that's would we consider confidential.
Would I be correct in assuming that you probably don't sell a lot of big quantities of diesel when they can go right to the Port of Blaine and get it right over the dock at almost your cost?
That's correct. Most of the large quantities that we do are on large yachts, large pleasure boats that are in the 100-foot range. They'll come in and just for convenience sake, because they want to tie up overnight, they'll use our facility and they'll negotiate the price.
Well, we certainly aren't going to build a nicer dock than you have, looking at what you have there. And if the price is that close to the same, that just I feel stronger than I did before we started this discussion. But
if I could just add, 2015 was probably one of our best years in volume, mainly because Mr. Dodd had closed, and that was 174,000 gallons total. And I think Dan would attest to that not a huge volume. So even at that, when we weren't splitting up the pie, it was still pretty thin as far as volume goes.
How big are your tanks?
We have two 12,000-gallon tanks.
And what do we have? What are the tanks that are existing there now? There are 3 of them?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I think there were 8,500, was it? Yeah.
And would we have one that was ethanol free and 2 in diesel, or what would you?
Our model looked at having one tank set up for diesel and one for non-ethanol fuel, clear fuel,
And what
gasoline.
Then what would you do with a 3rd tank?
Mothball it for the short term.
Well, if Rob, you said there were some things that you were still looking at.
We're looking at the condition of the tanks and what any other capital equipment that may be necessary to restart it. And we've got an engineering survey being done that should be ready, I think Adam said, in about 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, we definitely need to revisit it. That process is ongoing. I think it's most important that we have fuel. But one of the questions, whether it's coming from Semiahmoo side of the entrance to the harbor or it's in our harbor, I want to make sure that we have that available at a good price for people, a right price. And even if it's one pump, I don't know how you manage that. But a question or a point that came up, if Dodd was selling 1 million gallons of fuel.
80,000.
But he said he had been selling 1 million.
Years and years and years ago.
Years ago. That to me is, that brings up something that's far outside the scope of a fueling question. Why? Why was he selling 1 million gallons? That's a question I'd like to answer. What was happening in Blaine that he was able to sell 1 million gallons of fuel? And I think if we can look at the economic conditions regarding that period of time, then we might help us understand a little bit more about the direction that we should be taking our infrastructure upgrades at this end of the harbor, because that number is outrageous. I mean, if he's down to 80,000, you sold 174. What was going on when he sold 1 million?
The commercial trawl fleet was one of the major things, Mike. In the 80s, 70s, 80s, we probably had 30 to 45 trawlers working daily out of Blaine, probably burning around anywhere from 200 to 400 gallons a day of diesel fuel, delivering to CK fish primarily, and actually boundary fish, and Dahl CPAC was there at the same time. You had a tremendous trawl fleet that went year round. You had a larger gillnet fleet, seine fleet, before the moratoriums went in to reduce license numbers here. a lot of that capacity that would be burning fuel has gone away and it's not coming back. You know, trawling has been basically outlawed in Puget Sound, so you don't have the trawl fleet. They won't be back there. You can have a larger number of vessels come back to deliver to our tenants there in Blaine with the proper infrastructure and things in place to entice people to come there and do business. But that's the part we have to do. But those large numbers we were speaking to in trawl fleet that operated out of Blaine year round.
Yeah, he said his sales were closer to 80,000 gallons.
Gallons use was primarily due to
He just couldn't stay in business. And it wasn't that there wasn't a dock there for the last 4 or 5 years, but it just, so the fishing fleet or the pleasure crafts left. The reason we're down 100 boats now is kind of because of the Canadian dollar, wouldn't it be somewhat, Andy?
Yes, that's what's affecting the recreational fleet right now.
And so I would guess the 80, when we had a dock there and we were doing 80,000 gallons a year, there were 100 more boats in the harbor at that time. So this 80,000 might be.
hard to say how many sailboats were there, Dan. I mean, sailboats don't use 10, 12 gallons if they go. So, I mean, it depends on the displacement of the fleet and what type they were.
Well, I'd say you're engaged in answering some questions still. Let's get the answers to that.
Yeah, we'll come back to you with what the capital costs would be to restart the operations.
And then we'll make a decision at that point.
Okay, fair enough.
Is that reasonable, fellas?
Sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to see some further discussions with the gentleman from Semi-Ammo, see if, maybe something could be worked out long-term that's favorable to both fleets coming from the harbor over there
Are you guys prepared to address?
I mean, I understand you guys got to make money, don't get me wrong, but,
Are you prepared to address what that might be now, or do you want to do it at a later date?
I don't think we are.
Yeah, I say Doug and I discussed this, and I think we actually are anticipating maybe even putting a minor PowerPoint together for you of what we think some options would be to partner and how the infrastructure might work. It could be as simple as we discount, like I said earlier in mine, where we discount to the Blaine. If you show you're a Blaine harbor person, you get a special discount just like I do as a Semi-Ammo Yacht Club member. So there's a lot of mechanisms that we could potentially put in place to make it equitable and meet the needs of both the Port of Bellingham and the P&L of the condo association. So absolutely.
And in your figuring, realize we're not going to not sell over the dock. That's the best way a fisherman, the best price he can get.
That's correct.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't intend to change that, even though legally we could.
No, I'm not interested in changing that, but I mean, in the same token, if the prices are close, sometimes it's, it's handier to go there than it is to wait for the truck to come.
But you're over the dock. Does the port charge for over the dock?
It's a nickel above whatever the cost of the truck.
A nickel.
And that's to cover, I think, insurance, if I'm not incorrect.
On the recreational boats, it's actually a factor because like some of my friends actually team up and get it over the dock over there. And the biggest driver is the cost. And if there's some mechanism that could be put in place to make the costs at parity, then convenience takes over versus saving X.
Right.
Would it be out of place to ask the distributor what the difference in buying over the dock, or if we had our tanks buying the difference?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just will not talk pricing in public.
Not a problem.
He's on the camera.
That's all right. I understand.
But I would say.
Can you get the mic, please?
Thank you.
I am interested to know, because our company does not fuel over the dock in Blaine, but I would be interested to know how many gallons are coming over the dock in Blaine based upon the 5 cents a gallon that's collected. Does anybody know that?
Not off the top of our heads. It's certainly information we probably
In
have.
rough numbers, Mike was saying that what's a fishing boat, a big one, will take 5,000 gallons?
Up to 10.
But they don't always fill completely full, do they?
No, most times guys take 2,500, 3,000 gallons, but they will take up to 7,500. If you get guys coming and making Blaine the stop-off point coming from Alaska, they won't fuel in Alaska. We'll run the tanks down to where we got enough to get home. And when we get home, we'll take our bulk fuel here.
So 10 boats at 5,000 gallons is 50,000 in a rough number.
All right, things to work on.
Yeah, so the second part of this presentation is regarding the sawtooth. So Adam's prepared to give you some stuff.
Can I have just 1 second?
Oh, yeah.
Just for the folks, it was never my intent to create an issue amongst people in the county as far as competing for business. In my mind, it's a service. And if we can come up with something better than what we've been talking about doing in Blaine, I'm certainly interested in doing it. It's whatever's best for Whatcom County and the people that are coming to do business here. That's where I'm at. So don't misunderstand what I've been saying.
All right. Adam?
Adam Fulton, the Director of Facilities. Just wanted to have two goals, speaking about the sawtooth with the commissioners today. The two goals, the first one is to get an approximate approval that we're moving in the right direction with some immediate repairs to the Blaine sawtooth. And the second is to introduce the commission to a longer term thought for that same sawtooth for discussion later in the year at budget retreats, et cetera. So I would also like to just apologize right at the beginning is there's, I think, three competing notions for what could and should happen to this pier. And so I would just ask the commission to accept what I'm presenting today as a notional, both diagram and notional costs associated with that diagram, and details to be dialed in as we work the issues. This is a condition assessment report. We do condition assessment reports for a pier such as the Sawtooth every 5 years. That is, we follow what's called an AASHTO guidance manual of maintenance, I believe it is, and it's our practice of maintenance, and it's a recommendation on a national level for how often to survey your piers of a certain type of construction, typically 4 to 6 years for whether you have steel or wood or anything else. We've adopted 5 years as kind of the happy medium of all those things. So we have all of our marine structures, we're just getting them onto a 5-year cycle that we do a condition survey in order to budget for the following year, in which case we do repairs. That is the case here at the Blaine Sawtooth, where we have budget this year to actually go ahead and do design, and budget next year to repair. And that's on the bulkhead. They're kind of talking about two things here, and it accesses separate budgets in our current budget. One is the bulkhead, and the other are the marine structures. But both have funds for this year. So that's maybe a good point for the commission to store. The immediate repairs could look something like this blue shaded area. Again, I would ask just for a moment of grace to say that's just kind of notional for what we would do. Depending where the final operational solution arrived, we may do something slightly different.
Excuse me, Adam, you said we have funds this year. If I remember in our budget, when we had our budget retreat, didn't we have the Sawtooth and Blaine planned for 2017?
You are correct. However, there's also a smaller budget on a different line for some more immediate repairs.
Because of the emergency. Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
And the commissioner is correct. We have $285,000 budgeted in 2017 for the immediate repairs to our marine structures here. Anyhow, this would be a notional solution for an immediate repair. Slightly more technical view of that same notion. Again, here's the notion. Here's what we would think is the north end, and then the south end. And the repairs for those we suspect would come out around $193,000. Again, to reflect what the commissioner just said, we have a budget around $285,000, and this is notional. All to say that we're in the same ballpark. The notion of fix we would recommend we suspect fit within the budget we have, and these are notionally coming together.
Hey, Adam.
Yes.
Let's get back a slide, please.
Yes.
So the scope of work that the $193,000 gets you here, what's done?
Yeah. So the $193,000 gets you. This is the north end. I'm sorry. This is the north end.
I didn't like that slide.
My goodness, what just happened? Oh, sorry. Oh, my goodness.
Who's on first?
Sorry, I hit the end button instead of the down button. This is the notion. This is the north end. This is the south end.
Okay.
The work is actually what you see, those heavy red lines. Let me get a green pen. These heavy red lines in here are replacing caps and or stringers that are under the deck and rotten. None of this work, by the way, is under the ordinary high water line. It's all in the superstructure up above. So, which means that we're not bound to a fish window. We could hop on this design, which you actually already have. We have the PSA amendment already being developed right now for the next commission meeting. I'm sort of making the assumption that I think everyone's in agreement that we should do some immediate repairs to this facility. And then there are also some strapping efforts in here where either the corbels or some of the metal hardware is rotten away or detached or whatever the case.
Adam, what do you call a corbel? What's that look like if I went down there?
Yeah, so where two, say, beams come together and they rest together on a pile that supports their ends, and rather than just having just an end of a beam rest on the top of a round pile, they put, say, a 5-foot section like the letter T, and then the two ends rest on that T.
Okay.
And then I can draw a picture if you'd like.
I totally got it. It's different than in my world, but I know what it is.
It's 2x4s in your world.
It's on the pile.
Okay. That's all bolted together.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We just use 2x4s. No,
think of it as a header above a door frame.
Exactly what you got. Yeah. Okay.
Anyhow, so if there, again, there's two things I was hoping to accomplish today. One is to just get a general nod of the head that says, yeah, we're doing the right thing. Let's go ahead and proceed with these repairs, or at least start to get the cost together. I suspect the next action you would see is at our next commission meeting, and it would be go ahead and design the cost to go ahead and put together the plans and specs for that work. So I won't ask for a nod of the head just yet. The second thing I wanted to convey today is maybe a larger thought for this pier. And there's a lot of conversation, if I may. Let's see here. There we go. Whether this pier should look like that all the way across. Also, whether the pier should potentially only be, this long and just have the north. So these are some questions, and they're pretty big questions that we need to get decided for the larger scheme. Looking a little closer at the larger scheme, let me get rid of this, is, again, there's the north side. We'd shave off those teeth, and the south end, leaving a couple teeth, still making available the end or stern roller position. And then the price tag for that larger project is about $1.3 million. Again, all I wanted to do with that second half is just to introduce that to the commission for later consideration. Yes.
Adam, the $1.3 million you have shows that's for both the north and the south, so that's not taking into consideration just doing the north. It does them both.
You're correct.
Thank you.
And it changed the configuration, so you have two sawtooth slots and a long flat side?
You're correct.
How long is the flat side?
I don't know it off the top of my head. I'm going to guess it's 400 feet. I think the north section is, I want to say 300 or 350. No. I'm way off. It's 150. Yeah, thank you.
286.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Andy. The north section is 150, and the entire pier is about 300.
All right. Look, can I throw something out before Bobby jumps in here?
Absolutely.
So I'm a huge fan of filling in the bay. So the left side of your screen there, at the end of the pier, and if you drew a straight line back up over that bank to where the boats are parked and covered that all up, I wouldn't mind if there was a quick conversation amongst you folks to say, what would that mean? What would that take? And then shoot it down, but I wouldn't mind hearing some kind of an answer about what it would take to fill that section in and enlarge this entire structure. So,
you want to hear the conversation now?
No.
Okay.
No. Thank you. Thanks, Mom.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you, Adam.
Yes, sir.
I have an issue with the, it says access road, access to pier after repairs. We're going to be able to access still on that side? I don't know, I was a little confused on that.
Yeah, it is confusing, and that's the commissioner asked a great question. Let me clarify that. Like I mentioned, there's kind of two budget sources going on. One is the marine structures, which is really what we're talking about here. The second is the bulkhead work, which one of our tenants, Paul, expressed concern about earlier. And honestly, I think what we're doing with that bulkhead project, and I'm going to get to your question specifically in one moment, Commissioner, is looking at the entire peninsula, figuring out what our solutions are in the various sections of bulkhead, because we have all kinds of different bulkheads around that peninsula. Overlaying that with where is the most need right away, overlaying that with where do we have environmental issues to deal with concurrently, and then of course, what does all this cost, and when should we be trying to do this incrementally, so we can't do it all at once. What we decided here, or what I think would be smart for us to consider here, is to think about doing this section of bulkhead and actually this all the way back to Marine Drive. And what that does for us then is what the commissioner I think is alluding to is, besides having just this north access, it would open up the south access as well. The reason it's shown as inaccessible right now is because the bulkhead has failed, but the marine structure also needs work. So again, it's kind of the divide of budgets, but not necessarily the divide of a project. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'd like to point out that if you really need the access on both sides to use that pier. I mean, I'm sure you know that too. So it's kind of an important thing. The other question I have is the number you had up there, I think it was 1,296,000.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that with a flat-sided pier, or is that with the sawtooth replacement?
It is to construct that.
Just this?
Yeah. And again, I apologize to the commission. I just need you to accept the blue tinting and the price associated as notional, that we would really want to work on what is exactly needed out there.
And that's just minimal repairs to make the dock usable in what we see in blue here?
You're correct.
That's not to rebuild it?
That's correct.
Okay.
A complete rebuild of that pier is in the neighborhood of $4.1 million.
Okay. Yeah. The web locker, the end of it we see there, on what you have up there now. There's entryways right there for two lockers. What are we doing when we do these interim repairs? What are we doing for access for those folks that are having a tough time getting in and out of there now?
Yeah.
Is that going to be addressed?
It will be in the bulkhead side of the project. Again, I'm sorry to confuse you. Yes. Yes, we will. It'll be with the bulkhead project.
And that's in the interim, that's the near future here? Or is that the one we're talking long-term on that one?
No, it is not in the long term. It is in this year's budget. The $400,000 is in the 2016 budget. $3.7 million is in the 2017 budget.
Okay. So my question still remains, we've had a gentleman came here and spoke in a meeting and explained the problems he was having getting into the locker that we leased to him. Yeah. Or will we be addressing that when we address the interim or the temporary stuff with the dock is my question.
I believe we will.
Okay.
Commissioner, I have yet to delve into it very specifically. I had an engineer, Norm Gilbert, that was working on this, who has since moved his family to Tacoma. I'm a little bit out of information on that.
Well, it's because of the bulkhead. It's dropped there,
Yep.
and but we need to have some kind of decent access for him into that. We're moving somewhere.
So just to be clear, you're saying that the bulkhead work can happen in 2016, even though it's going to be in-water work?
The work behind the bulkhead, for instance, I think there's two things that could happen, Director. One is we could repair behind the bulkhead so that we don't have, this is a pavement issue, frankly, that's solvable that way. I think we could also do some sort of temp repair in water for Sound Pacific. Thank you. But I think the larger scale bulkhead work is more of a permanent. I think we could do an emergency repair for our immediately failing, commercially threatening bulkhead failure. But I think
does that just include the first blue section, Adam?
No, actually, I'm not thinking any of this is in that emergency commercially threatening area. I think that sound. Yeah, Paul, thank you. I believe it's his area that is that has an immediate commercial threat to it.
Can you pull Google it on Google Earth, and so we can see that on the?
Yeah, and since we're bringing that up, there may have been a miscommunication, because I know that anytime there's an emergency, there's no funding question here. So if Paul, if you thought that there was a funding problem, if there's an emergency, we're gonna take care of that.
Can you show a little more of the sawtooth there?
So if you could, yeah,
there we go.
We can bring that up while we're discussing this.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
and certainly, Paul, you and I see each other quite. If you got something going on, let me know, please.
I'm building.
Staff are going to come with recommendations, which ones are the most important. And of course, then we as commissioners get to weigh in on it. But you know, the wish list is going to get awful big. And then when you compare this with other projects that we have going, we need to put all of them in order. Do you plan to do that at that budget retreat in April?
Absolutely. The commissioner is exactly right. I mean, there's one pot of money, and it's tit for tat sort of thing. I mean, you can either do work over here and not do it here, or vice versa, but you just can't do everything you want or need to do. The commissioner is exactly right.
So, Adam, thanks for bringing this up, and thank you, Dan, for asking for this image. Although I was a bit tongue-in-cheek about filling that area in, but you can see the access to both sides of this pier aren't awesome. And Sheila and I drove up there a few weeks ago, and on the lower side of that building, in the middle, the web blockers, her car's 6 feet wide, and it still felt like there wasn't much room. There was plenty of room. It just didn't feel like there was plenty of room. If there's a way to, without significantly increasing the cost, although there is cost, we can add more upland space to access, I think it could relieve congestion that I feel is there. Whether or not it really is there, I don't know, but it does seem like it's a little bit constrained. And certainly up by that other corner, at the upper end of the sawtooth, you know, unless you're literally filling in that corner to create an alleyway that's a little bit wider, it's always going to remain constrained on that side.
Thank you for that comment. I would just like to point out to the commissioners at their last meeting or the meeting before, they approved a $150,000 budget to remove this Dot appliance store building shown in the green box here. So that portion of the industrial peninsula will get a little more freed up for truck traffic, et cetera. And I think everyone will tell you, Andy, our harbor master, I think everyone will tell you that this is really the preferred access to that pier.
Yep. Tight sometimes. Yeah.
It is the preferred access the way it is now, but it really isn't the best access with the yard. I mean, if you took your pin down to the northwest end of the dock there, if, at least in my mind, when we were repairing that dock, if we added, you notice the bulkhead comes out, jogs out, you can see where the dock comes in, and there's a jog in the bulkhead, right, and you see it, yeah. You know, if when we redid the dock, we if there was a flat edge put on there, we could increase that into the dock so that there was a bigger area on that end. You would find that would probably be the preferred end to get onto. It's really tight there now to get around that corner is why the other is preferred. But
is there road access there now?
Yeah.
There is, Commissioner, right? This drawing's a little bit askew because
okay, I see.
But that's essentially the road right there. So the Commissioner Briscoe is as inquiring about even an 8 or 10 foot addition off of this side.
Just even with that bulkhead, Adam, was what I was, so that you don't have to change bulkhead there. You know, it goes there and it jogs in.
Oh, sure.
I think it was I measured it out. I think it was like 14 or 15 feet.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So the only thing I was looking for again is just a notional agreement that we're moving in the right direction, that immediate repairs to this facility are desired, and we will go ahead and work toward that.
Well, someone had a question if you want it sawtooth or straight across. I'm not a fisherman, so I couldn't answer that, but I did talk to Dana Wilson, and he said he didn't care if it was straight or sawtooth, just get the thing done and put a crane on it as soon as possible. And so we're doing that, obviously, and that I think is really, so if you want a nod of all the things we've talked about, gas stocks or anything else, I think this is probably the most important one to do as soon as we can, and it sounds like Mr. Burrell is the same with his.
I would echo that we do need to get this done. And as far as the sawtooth flat edge, one of the things in my mind was it's a multi-purpose dock if it's flat. With a sawtooth, it's got one purpose of backing a certain kind of boat in, and you can't get long vessels, large vessels from the yard, say 80, 90 footers. There's no place for them to lay and load or unload gear there, which is another thing that brings more business to Blaine. So a multi-purpose dock would be better in my mind. But you got a nod from me.
So not sawtooth is what you're saying?
Yeah.
So we're going to spend what we have in the budget this year for repairs?
What we would do there budgetarily is pull monies from 2017
and put them
forward
in
to
2016. Okay.
And we will come back to you at the time that we award the bid for the approval of the contract and the budget adjustment as is necessary. And the question of whether it's a sawtooth or straight edge does not need to be decided until we do the permanent work, not the temporary work.
So we'd be giving, you're asking us, should you move forward on the $193,000 repair?
Toward that, no, I'm not asking for an action item. I'm just that's about the ballpark of fix that we are looking to move toward.
Okay.
And what the commission will see at the next meeting is a PSA amendment to go ahead and generate plans and specs so that we can go out to bid and get the work done.
Toward that end.
Yep.
So all of the projects that we have going, this one should take top priority, and you're asking us if we agree?
I wouldn't say that's true of all the port projects, but I would say it's true of the Blaine, Sawtooth, and Marine projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything in Blaine at this time?
Yeah.
Sure.
Super.
Is there any reason not to just bring every penny out of 17 and put it in 16 and just start rolling?
Yeah, it's because we want to do the work we can without doing in-water work.
Okay.
And so the reason we're doing the temporary fix is they're above the water line, and we can do those now without doing the fish window. And
So the word temporary is, it's not really temporary. It's more like what Brian would say was an interim, right? So it's going to be a permanent solution. It's just not the whole project.
The commissioner's
right?
correct,
Okay.
as is the director.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with doing that. I mean, it's just making it faster, right? So, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioners. That's it for the update. We didn't have any action specifically on that, but wanted to give you that appraisal.
Cool. Ruby? That is our agenda. New business? No?
Nothing.
New business, Mr. Briscoe?
Couple things.
Bring it up.
Since I'm new here, I don't know what our relationship was with Alcoa aluminum plant, but I would like to think we can put forward a helping hand in any way we can and talk with them about how we could assist them in any way to keep them where they're at. Basically, the Port of Bellingham was responsible for bringing them here in the Pete Zwanich, and I certainly would like to make sure that we're very forward with helping them stay here.
Dot and I have both met with Alcoa. Dot has sat on a number of committees. I think one of them was state appointed to try and work through some of the issues. So yeah, we're staying on top of it. We're doing what we can to help, and we'll keep you informed as to what that is.
Is there someone we can write a letter to with the commission?
Yeah, I think at some point in time they'll be writing letters and going to Olympia, et cetera. But let us work through some issues with Alcoa to figure out exactly what that is.
Sure. All right.
Another thing I had was I was spoken to by the Whatcom Working Waterfront Coalition, and I think Mike Levy's not here. Okay, need to get talk with Mike, and they're looking for. They want to make sure that we're on hand with a timely program for public. We got a couple of economic studies coming out, and then the CFES coming up on release for this stuff that's coming out. Exactly what their details are, I don't know, but maybe we can
Yeah, we have Tiffany, our meetings and corporate events person, is actually working on the Sea Feast event, and she's been attending a number of meetings on that. I've gone to a number of meetings as well. The economic study I don't have a lot of information on. So
The Western has it doing the final.
I saw an email on it this morning. I saw an email this morning. I'm just not up to speed as to what that is.
Okay. And then I have one other thing. Is Sunil still here?
No.
There he is. Thank you for your tour. It was graciously appreciated, and I learned a lot about the airport here, and I think you're doing a fine job out there, Sunil. I do have something that I wish you would facilitate, and I would help in any manner I can, and it concerns our taxi cab companies in Bellingham. You and I spoke, and I think they don't quite understand the rules and regs they can operate under there. I think there's from what they reported to me, is not what you and I spoke of. So there's some misconception maybe on their part there. And if we could put together a meeting of those folks with someone, yourself or someone, or myself, I don't mind being there also. I would like to see that happen so that we can get the playing field thing with Uber in their mind put to bed, so that those folks know what they can do and can't do there, because from what the emails I have, they explain to me they're not on the same line as you are with what can be done and not done there. So if we could do that, I would greatly appreciate it, Sunil. And again, thank you for your time out there.
Did something change with the cabs? Was there anything that changed? I wasn't under the impression there was a change for them.
The taxi cabs feel that our current regs don't permit them to go into the terminal under a prearranged condition. I internally have instructed our staff and enforcement people that that should be allowed. If there's a prearrangement, they're allowed to park in the prearranged area and go inside to assist the parties that they're picking up.
So if they become an Uber, they can go in like Uber does, otherwise...
Uber technically shouldn't be able to leave their vehicle unattended
at
the curb, but a marked taxi cab that's in the queue, that's for on-demand.
Right.
But they can also operate as prearranged vehicles.
Like Uber does.
Like Uber does.
So they can operate like Uber if they've got a destination and a fare right there, rather than sit, but they can't sit and wait there.
They can't sit and wait there. They can park in the prearranged area that is at the curb and go into the terminal. Somebody needs assistance with a disabled person, a wheelchair, or
actually, if I understand it, they actually got a better deal. Before they could only be across the street. Now they can act like Uber if they have a...
Yeah, I think what our regs weren't clear on is, one, you're on demand, which is when you arrive, you expect a cab, it's a queue. But if you have a prearrangement with a limousine or a private car, they can act as a private vehicle. And we're not enforcing, we're not enforcing that they should be at the prearranged lot. They're allowed to do that.
Well, I think if I've learned anything from the taxi cabs, if someone tries to pretend they're prearranged, the other cab drivers will quickly jump on that bad behavior.
They're all policing each other.
They're very well, yeah.
So if we could do that, I'd greatly appreciate that.
We'll do that.
And thank you, Sunil.
That's it?
Everybody's hoping so, huh? Oh, no, there is one more thing. It's a short thing. On our agenda, something that's bothered me since I've become a commissioner is at the very top, it says public comment period. And it says, out of respect for everyone who attends the commission meeting, the public comment period will be limited to 15 minutes total. I would like to see us strike the public comment period will be limited to 15 minutes total. In my mind, if we got 8 people here that want to speak their 3 minutes, and I know we've never done that, but the perception is there in the paperwork, and if we could just take that out, I would like to do that. But it's how the other commissioners feel on that. We're still limiting the people to their time to speak, but I would just kind of like to take that out of there.
The intent is that if we have a long agenda and a long meeting and we've got a bunch of public comment about the Iraq war, that we limit to 15 minutes and move on to the business of the port. That's the intent of it, because we do get some public comment that's not necessarily related. We haven't had this lately in a few years, but that's not necessarily related to the business of the port. So that's why it's in there, is just to protect us so that we can get on with the business of the port. That being said, it's whatever the commission wants.
And that does make sense to me, because we've never held anyone 2-3 minutes, and we've never not let more people speak than the 15 minutes. We've gone way over it numerous times. But I like the option to end it if we need to, if in fact it's not something that pertains to port business or for whatever reason we feel it's needed. I don't mind having it in there.
Well, that's good. We understand that, but a lot of the people don't understand that. They're going to look at that and think, well, there's only 15 minutes allowed total to speak, and they may not come because they feel there's going to be too many people. That's where I was coming from. I understand what you're saying. I get that. But on the other hand, everybody doesn't look from this side as to what we're doing. They're looking from out there, and it's something that says to people, well, they're only going to give people 15 minutes total to speak. And if they don't know, Dan, Commissioner Robbins, that they're actually going to get more time, then they may not come and participate, was where I was coming from.
Interesting.
So, I mean, we don't have to, I'm just putting it out there to think about.
Let's talk about that sometime.
Yeah.
All right. Anything further, Dave?
No.
Nothing? I had one thing, but I'll talk to you tomorrow. It's about propane. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Oh, come on.
No, it's not that big a deal. Rob, anything? No? Legal, Tamara, all good? All right. Senior staff, anybody?
One more thing. Paul, are you okay with what we got going here? That we're going to get something done for you? I mean,
I'll be on top of you.
I just want to know that your questions have been answered to satisfaction.
Yeah, and I just think addressing this quite well. This is an opportunity to make sure it stays on priority.
I know. No, it's done now. It's all right. All right. Another from senior staff? All right. Public, anything? Folks? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make the comment that we are available if whoever wants to reach out to us, whether it be and Doug is obviously your counterpart in that, so he'd be the right person to talk to get statistics and data, and we're more than willing to work with the Port of Bellingham, and in fact would enjoy cooperative meetings with Blaine to see what's best for that whole community. So absolutely willing to help.
And you said you'd put together a PowerPoint, so I will coordinate with you when we plan to bring forward the next piece of this, which is the capital, and we'll bring your PowerPoint in at that time.
That's perfect.
Sir, are you the Paul that I talked to a couple days ago on the phone? Doug. It was Doug. Okay. Thank you. All right. Name to face. Thanks. All right. Well, with that, we are adjourned.